In a posh Colorado Springs suburb of Trail Mark Loop, Louise Andrews has her hands full.
She's got a couple of young twins and another young child in the house.
Louise has won the battle and gotten them all down for a nap. Now she can enjoy a cup of coffee in a moment's peace.
She gets back into the kitchen and realizes they've left quite a mess, which is not uncommon for preschool kids. So she starts cleaning up. While she's cleaning up, she hears a very loud bang. It's enough to startle her.
She knew it came from outside her kitchen window, possibly from the house next door.
She doesn't know what it is, but she wants to investigate.
Hello? Does anybody need any help?
Across town, Lt.Joe Kenda is caught up in a hectic day at the office.
Yeah, we need to recanvass that apartment building.
Oh, the old guy in the pickup truck.
Yeah, there were several people that weren't there.
I have paper everywhere. I have cases everywhere. I'm trying to keep these all straight in my head.
Hey, Lieutenant.
Yeah, what's up?
Hey, did you hear back from the DA on that case?
Yeah, I did. I'm gonna have to find that.
Oh.
The radio is blaring, the phone is ringing, 3 people are talking to me in different conversations.
Can we circle back with Officer Brown here? Guys, give me a second.
It is ultimately the Tower of Babel.
So what do we got?
They say we have officers en route. 911 call from a 13-year-old male who says his friend, who is the same age, is unconscious and bleeding, and he's hysterical on the phone.
So you got a shooting out on Trail Mark Loop. Ritz, you're with me.
We drive to this place, and it's in an upper middle-class neighborhood. This is not a place we normally show up.
They don't get a whole lot of traffic through the area. So when something happens in there, there are a lot of neighbors.
Oh, I always want to speak to the first officer in the scene, so I find out who that is, and I see the look in his face, and I know the look. The look is somebody's not alive in this building.
Lieutenant.
How you doing?
Good.
So what do we got?
A 13-year-old dead, gunshot wound to the head. It's in the second-story bathroom. His name is P.J. Grant. A lot of blood in the scene. A couple kids came in, found him, called us.
The officer tells Kenda that neighbors also reported to police they heard a gunshot, but no one saw exactly what happened.
We have a 13-year-old kid whose life is over. It particularly pains me when they say 13 years old. It produces an emotional edge on the whole affair.
Does PJ live here?
Now one of the other kids does.
Are we any adults present?
Not according to the kids.
All right, thank you.
Hey.
It was shortly after school hours and before most business hours in, so there was no parents present at the time.
Detectives here.
Okay, thank you.
Juveniles are protected in Colorado by the Colorado Children's Code, a separate body of law that requires specific, different treatment of people under the age of 18. Their parents have to be present before any questioning can be conducted. These children are nothing more than witnesses.
How are they?
Yeah, they're still pretty shaken up.
They are adolescents. You have to be cautious when you talk to them.
They're going to be scared of you. You have to get on their side.
One's name is Jeff Simpson. He lives in this house. The other kid's name is Adam Davis, and he is a friend of Jeff Simpson's.
So what happened, boys?
BJ's dead in the bathroom.
He shot himself in the head with a gun.
It's limited in what you're going to get out of them. They need time to calm down. They're in a shell shock type emotional state.
Because of their upset manner at the moment, I don't want to talk to them at all.
The parents of the witnesses have been notified.
Okay, we'll revisit once they get here.
Yeah.
I want to see the scene.
It's upstairs.
I'll talk to them in a little while.
Okay.
Thank you.
But in the master bathroom, they find a gruesome scene.
He's on his right hip, laying on the floor, and his torso is twisted at the waist.
His other hand.
2 live rounds, same caliber.
looks like a suicide. We'll see what the coroner says.
He did it in this bathroom, alone, maybe looking at himself in the mirror, deciding that life wasn't worth living anymore, puts a gun to his head and pulls the trigger. The gun is close to his hand, 2 bullets in his other hand. Who knows? Maybe he was loading the gun and had more bullets than required in his hand. Hard to say.
What's unusual in this case is that it's involving a very young child. It's kind of rare that we ever see a juvenile, 13, 14, in this age range, actually kill themselves.
It's very, very rare for that young of an age, but it's not unheard of. Boys are much more prevalent in committing suicide at this age, more prevalent than girls.
Kenda takes a closer look at the blood spatter. Something's not adding up.
You can interpret the blood spatter to give you proximity of how the victim was positioned. What we find on this case, the blood spatter is very low to the ground.
I see high-velocity blood spatter on the bathroom wall. It's 14 inches off the floor. Unless this kid's 14 inches tall, he wasn't standing when he was shot.
He would have had to have been on his knees, crouched down in a near fetal position to get what we were seeing in blood spatter.
Yeah, he wasn't even sitting. It's still too low.
This is very odd.
Jeff?
Sounds like the parents are here. Yeah.
Kenda hears an anxious voice coming from downstairs.
Jeff? Jeff, are you okay? What is going on?
I'm okay.
What have they done to you? What is going on? Oh.
Jeff's mom's protective, concerned, upset.
Where is he, Adam? Where are you? Where is my boy?
Parents can be your ally at that point. It can also be detrimental, depends on how the parents react.
Adam's father is the antithesis of Jeff's mother.
What have you done this time? You better start talking to me right now.
Adam's father is angry and wants to choke this kid of his. The last thing in the world I need at this moment is an irate parent berating the child. That's not going to work at all. What that's going to make a kid do is shut down or lie his ass off.
I need to get him out of here before this all goes south. I'm gonna talk to Jeff.
He's a good kid. He's never done anything wrong. He's been a great child. I don't understand what could have happened here.
Jeff, I need you to tell me everything you remember about the moments prior to the shooting.
Okay.
And I'm being very, very calm and very quiet because I don't want to alarm him. I want him to see me not as an enemy, but as a friend. And I want to give him the opportunity to explain himself in his own words about what happened here in this house.
Adam, PJ, and I, we were hanging out in the living room watching TV. Remind me again why we decided to watch this show?
Don't you have a note?
That's okay. Tell me about the gun. What do you mean? Well, where did he get a gun? Does it belong in this house?
Is it your dad's gun?
No, we don't own any guns.
It was PJ's. He showed it to us.
Hey guys, check this out.
Dude, is that loaded?
Yep.
After a few minutes, PJ went to the bathroom. And we heard a gunshot. And we saw him laying on the floor, and he looked dead.
Why would PJ want to take his life?
He wasn't doing well in school, and he just gotten expelled.
Being expelled from school is a major event. Could that be enough to cause a middle school kid to end his days? Yeah, it could.
At that age, 13 years old, emotions play a big role in your life.
What Jeff had to say is a very plausible explanation to the death of PJ.
Kenda turns his attention to the second eyewitness, Adam Davis.
Can I talk to you for a minute?
I want to talk to Adam alone, because I know what's going to happen if Dad comes in the room. Dad's going to put his hands on the kid, or at least verbally put his hands on him, which is going to result in either him saying nothing at all or lying. And I want that.
So what happened today?
Well, after school, we came over here and we were all in the basement listening to CDs.
Adam's statement catches Kenda's attention.
You were in the living room?
No.
So you're in the basement. PJ was there. Jeff was there. You're there and you're all listening to music.
Yes. And then PJ went to the bathroom and shot himself.
So now we have the first lie. You can't be in the living room watching television and be in the basement listening to CDs. Somebody's lying. Either Adam is or Jeff is. What else are we lying about, gentlemen? Are we lying about suicide? Or we're lying about how this kid comes to be dead? If this kid didn't kill himself, someone did kill him. Well, now you have my undivided attention. We're investigating a death of a 13-year-old boy. His two friends say they all came there after school. PJ showed him a gun he had. PJ went to the bathroom and shot himself. However, now, when talking to these two boys, there's a serious discrepancy in their stories.
Jeff Simpson says they were in the living room watching TV, but Adam Davis tells a very different story.
We came over here and we were all in the basement listening to CDs.
Crime scene has said that could it be suicide? Yeah, maybe. But now with this discrepancy, now I'm concerned. Now we have to look further and we have to be very careful.
In order to maintain the boys' trust in him, Kenda chooses not to reveal the fact that he knows one of them is lying.
That makes sense. I mean, can I speak with the parents, please? Your kids are understandably distressed. I want to give them a little time to settle before I ask any more questions. Is that okay?
Okay.
I'm going to notify the parents. All right, love you. Thanks.
I want to look at this kid in the morgue after he's been cleaned up and get all the blood off his head and out of his hair so I can look at that wound.
But before Kenda heads to the morgue, he must have the conversation that every homicide detective dreads.
Providing death notifications is not in any way pleasurable thing, but it's really difficult when it's a young kid.
Kenda can't help but notice the stark difference between Jeff's neighborhood and the one where PJ lives.
They go to the same school, but he lives in a working class neighborhood in a less than pleasant kind of place, in a less than nice house, with less than nice things happening around him. He is from a different world. PJ and Jeff go to the same school, but they don't come from the same kind of background.
Can I help you? Hi, I'm Lieutenant Kenda from the Colorado Springs Police Department. Are you the father of PJ Grant?
Yes, I am. He's not home right now. What's this about?
Well, I'm sorry to say I have some very bad news. PJ was shot and killed earlier today.
There's a knock on your door. You don't know that your life's going to change in a few seconds. I mean, how can you ever recover from something like that? It'd be horrible.
As of right now, we're not exactly sure what happened. This could have been an accident, but there's also the possibility that it was a suicide.
Kenda tries to figure out if their son could in fact have been suicidal.
I've heard that PJ was recently expelled from school.
Yes, he was expelled. He was cutting class and not doing his homework. But things were looking up. I mean, he was seeing a therapist and he was excited because he was getting into martial arts and everything, and he loved that.
He was getting better.
What the parents are telling us is not really consistent with a kid who is going to go out and kill himself. We started seeing some positives. You know, if he's starting to excel in his sport that he's doing, karate, they're seeing some positive reactions from them. It would be very unusual for this to all of a sudden become a suicide case.
His martial arts interest translated into actual taking lessons, and he was pretty adept at it. It was a positive thing for him. If PJ wouldn't kill himself, then who would kill him, and why?
Did he ever mention friends by the names of Adam or Jeff?
No.
No, I don't know them.
Had he ever mentioned their names?
No.
He seemed very surprised that he knew these two kids.
And your son was right-handed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know how it would be possible for PJ to get his hands on a gun?
No, I don't own any guns.
Oh, no.
You feel sorry for him at this point. You're trying to console him, but what can you do? The best you can do is just tell him, you know, I'm going to try to find out what happened to your son. and we will let you know.
For Kenda, the visit to PJ's house has only sparked more questions. Mainly, how did PJ come to be friends with Jeff and Adam? And where did the gun come from?
We have a questionable crime scene, questionable position of the body. We're gonna have to dig deeper to make a determination whether this was suicide, accidental, intentional.
Kenda hopes his visit to the morgue will provide some answers.
Hey, Doc, how you doing?
Hey, Joe. This one of yours?
Unfortunately.
I look at PJ on the table after he's been cleaned up and showered and all the blood's out of his hair.
So what do we know so far?
The left side is the entrance. The right side is the exit. It went right through his head, and it clipped the medulla oblongata.
In the Middle Ages, warriors referred to that spot in the head as Heaven's Gate. If you would drive a sword through the base of someone's skull, you would drive it into the medulla and the spinal cord, causing instantaneous death.
So this kid was dead before he hit the floor?
Yeah.
But was this a suicide?
I look at the wound, and it's wrong. It's completely wrong.
Generally, the strong hand is the hand used for the firearm. It was a right-handed boy, so we would have expected a right-handed gunshot.
Kenda closely examines the bullet's point of entry.
Pressure contact wounds are the common wound in a suicide because people are emotionally maxed. There is stippling and tattooing, which are unburned particles of powder and debris burning the skin black, singeing the hair around the gunshot wound on the head.
Is there any tattooing?
No, and there's no sign of stippling.
This wound was administered from a minimum of 18 inches away. It's not in his hand, it's in somebody else's hand.
This kid didn't kill himself.
Doesn't seem possible.
Somebody else did.
The next morning, Kenda heads to the middle school that PJ once attended with Jeff and Adam.
Mr. Cattell? I'm Lieutenant Kenda.
Have a seat.
I meet the principal, and I explain why I'm there. We're investigating this death of PJ Grant.
Oh my God. I just expelled him. What happened?
He was found with a gunshot wound to the head. Can you tell me what kind of kid he was?
I mean, he cut classes. He had some issues, but nothing that was outrageous.
What can you tell me about a Jeff Simpson?
Oh, Jeff. Yeah, he's a good student. You know, he's the kind that you want to see walking down your hallways.
He describes Jeff Simpson as a very bright, excellent student, plays by the rules, one of his best kids.
How about Adam Davis?
He's not Jeff.
He describes Adam as a loner who doesn't really associate with anybody. It was surprising to him that he even knew PJ, and even more surprising that he knew Jeff Simpson.
Have you noticed anything out of the ordinary with these three lately?
Well, now that you mention it, Jeff, he's been acting a little different lately, but nothing that had us concerned.
Different how?
Well, maybe he was keeping a little more to himself. Saw him walking alone a little more often.
His explanation was kids that age are moody and they go through phases.
Would you mind if I spoke with some of your students?
Sure.
I want to talk to some more people. So we bring in some kids that know him.
As Kenda speaks with his classmates, a different picture of this star student, Jeff Simpson, begins to emerge.
You know Jeff Simpson?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me how he's been acting differently lately?
He's just been acting really weird. He's been dressing in black.
People started noticing that he was pale, he was thin, he was actually going through some kind of a change.
He's just been talking about devil worship.
Is there anything else you can think of?
He's been listening to satanic metal music.
He told me he wants to be with the devil.
Oh, that's pretty dramatic.
The information we're hearing here is a new twist to the investigation.
All right, well, I appreciate your help.
Let's go back to class.
Jeff also tells them he's a member of a satanic cult, and that death and human sacrifice is part of the cult.
Well, maybe there's more to this kid than meets the eye. Maybe this idyllic, cul-de-sac, upper middle class kid is involved in some things that are more dark and mysterious.
This case begins as a case of tragic suicide involving children. Could it be he was a target instead of self-destructive? Well, we've certainly raised that issue. We've got to find the answer. So now we know that this is not a suicide. Physical evidence says that. We know that Jeff and Adam are both lying about the circumstance. And now we have an even bigger problem of kids saying Jeff Simpson is in a satanic cult. A component of satanic cults is sacrifice.
In some of the demonic cults, you'll see that they require some kind of sacrifice to their deity.
In the name of Satan.
You see people sacrificing animals, or even human sacrifice is not out of the realm of possibility.
This devil worshiping bit, nobody's heard of this before. This is all new information.
So we want to talk to somebody who's the most knowledgeable about Jeff's behavior as it relates to the supposed satanic cult that he has become a member of. Everyone says that Sammy Fitzgerald is the guy that knows all about this. He's one of Jeff's closest buddies.
Well, I mean, it started a few months ago. All the weird stuff that's been going on. He had always been into video games, especially the ones where you're shooting and killing people. I mean, I guess it got to a point where you can't even carry on a conversation with him, He always has to bring up something about guns or death.
Did he say anything to you about the occult?
Yeah. We would be hanging out.
Stole these from my dad, man. Awesome, man.
And he would always have to bring up something weird, satanic rituals, or how he joined a satanic cult.
Okay, what is this? You ever read the Satanic Bible?
No, and I don't think I'm going to. What is it supposed to mean?
It means what he tells me.
It honestly got to the point, I couldn't be friends with him anymore, I got scared.
On one occasion, with, in Sammy's words, a wild look in his eye, he chased him around his house with a knife in his hand. Now, that's a serious thing.
What else did he say about Satan?
He said his goal is to be at the right hand of the devil. I mean, I don't know what that means. And apparently, in order to do that, you have to make a human sacrifice. He said he's already sacrificed animals.
You get to thinking, okay, if Jeff is actually into this devil worshiping and he's telling people he has to commit sacrifices to the devil, is this a sacrificial killing to appease the devil?
Did he happen to tell you where this cult meets?
It's in Manitou Springs.
Thank you. Go back.
So when he said Manitou Springs, I kind of knew what was coming next. And he said, well, there's animal sacrifice and human sacrifice that takes place all the time, really. And it's in this castle in Manitou Springs.
The nearby town of Manitou Springs is home to an abandoned mansion that has long been the subject of urban legend.
No one is thus surprised when the rumor says the satanic cult's international headquarters is in Manitou Springs, Colorado.
Though it's supposedly a myth, Kenda still feels the need to investigate the location.
We go contact Manitou Springs PD. I've never actually physically been there, so we go there.
Well, here it is.
All right, let's go take a look.
And it's a broken down, abandoned building.
Watch your step.
Oh, good.
That's creepy.
Lieutenant, come take a look at this.
All All it takes is one kid with a spray can of paint who puts a 5-point pentagram on a wall in an abandoned building, and the rumor is underway.
No, I just think this is a place teens come to drink and make out.
Do we actually believe there's a satanic cult loose in the city? No, we don't.
Back at headquarters, Kenda stops by the crime lab, where technicians have been dusting the handgun for prints.
So what do we have on the gun?
We took fingerprints from the body, of course, and we took them from the boys, because we were going to do this comparison.
Well, yeah, you'll want to know this. All 3 boys' fingerprints are on that gun. They've all handled it.
All 3 of them?
All 3.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
All 3 of them have touched this weapon. Somebody shot PJ, and we know it wasn't PJ. It's one of the other 2. We don't know which one.
From this point forward, we're conducting a homicide investigation.
One of those 2 boys killed that kid. So it's time to talk to the boys and to be a little less nice this time.
Detectives return to Jeff Simpson's house to search his bedroom for any concrete evidence linking him to Satanism.
These friends of his are telling us that he's changed. He's talking about satanic stuff, the devil, bragging about it, how he really has become obsessed with the idea of the devil and satanic worship, to the point where he's saying to really do this right, you have to kill, and in this case, kill a person. Would that cause us concern? In this particular case, yes, because what do we have? We have a young boy dead in Jeff's house. One of the students who'd palled around with Jeff had talked about the observations that he had observed, the changes that he had observed in Jeff, talking about the devil, becoming a little bit more violent, obsessed with the shoot-'em-up type games, the interactive games, and had actually at one point chased him around with a knife. That information is very revealing in the fact that, you know, you have a child who, obviously they're trying to develop their own identity, but he's going so far as to possibly being a threat to others. This is somebody we really want to ask questions about and really want to learn more about.
We're looking for anything that might be out of the ordinary for a young boy. Drugs, knives, certain types of books.
Anytime we're conducting an investigation, you're looking to get all the answers. So this is another portion that we're going to have to expand on to try to determine if this is involved in this case in any way.
But a thorough search fails to show Jeff as anything other than an eccentric adolescent.
Here's something.
What is it?
Death metal rock.
That's not really evidence.
You can dismiss the cult thing as not having a basis in fact. No evidence was ever discovered in Jeff's room that says he's truly into devil worship. None of that's true in his house. None of it's true in his possessions. This is the rumor around a middle school that he's involved in this. The satanic cult thing is urban legend in Colorado Springs, which has no merit to it beyond rumor and innuendo.
You're dealing with young kids. We're trying to ask young kids what they know and hear, and a lot of it comes from exactly what they heard or what they think they heard. What we see is a lot in what we've probably seen at this point about the demonic worshiping is rumor mill. And it probably starts with somebody just saying something so off the wall that some other kid runs with it. So in this particular case, I think the rumor mill had kind of taken over as to something one of these boys may have said, and it became this expanded to a point where now we're investigating it. Probably completely false. There's no physical evidence to tie that to be anything true with Jeff, but we have to investigate it. So it's just one of those sidetracks that we end up going on while trying to determine what happened to PJ.
All right, there's nothing here. Let's get out of here.
After searching the abandoned castle, Kenda isn't convinced Jeff is a true Satanist. But that doesn't mean he and Adam aren't killers. So he arranges to have their parents bring them in for more questioning.
I understand you were advised of your rights. You're willing to waive them and talk to me?
Yes.
So how'd you know PJ? Everyone at school said you guys weren't really friends.
We're not really.
He talks about how he has a girlfriend and PJ has a girlfriend and the 2 girls are friends. So that's how he really gets to know PJ.
We started hanging out a little because of the girls, and Adam and I ran into him after we got off the bus. He just came home with us. What do you want to do when we get back?
I don't know. Go play some games or something.
Yeah, I got the new Sega.
He goes on to explain that PJ had been very depressed.
Hey, PJ.
He gets expelled from school. He breaks up with his girlfriend. He provides all those emotional triggers that could lead one to a suicide.
We're gonna go hang out. Do you want to come?
Okay.
You're still sticking to the suicide story?
It's getting tougher to believe him in one way because we already know that he lied.
Kids will lie to the bitter end if they think it will keep them out of trouble.
Before you found it in the bathroom, did you touch the gun?
No.
Did Adam?
No, I don't think so.
And after you found PJ, did you touch the body?
No.
Did you touch the gun then?
No, the way you saw him is the way we found him.
Though he remains calm and friendly, Kenda slowly starts to dismantle Jeff Simpson's story.
One of the techniques we'll use to try to break somebody of the lie is that we'll share with them some of the physical evidence that's completely contrary to what they have to say. PJ's a right-handed person. It's a left-handed gunshot wound.
About the suicide story, we have evidence that shows that PJ didn't shoot himself.
Jeff stares at me, and his eyes get as big as silver dollars, and his mouth drops open.
In an adjacent interview room, Detective Brian Ritz has Adam Davis on the ropes as well.
So, what happened exactly?
PJ killed himself in the bathroom while we were in the basement.
You're lying!
Sir?
You better start telling
Sir?
the truth or...
Excuse me. With all due respect, this may go easier if you bring it down just a little, all right? Now, Adam, PJ didn't kill himself, and I need to know who did.
The more that they're confronted with the evidence, the more that they slowly start to break down.
Okay. We were all in the basement. And PJ pulled out a loaded gun.
Guess what I got?
What?
Check this out.
Oh my... Man, is that real?
You know it? Is it loaded? Yep. But I can unload it.
They took the bullets out and put them on the table.
Dude, can I see it?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Thanks.
We were all playing with it and passing it back and forth.
It is real.
And we were pulling the trigger, but only because it was clicking and there was no bullets in it.
So now we have placed this gun in the hands of 3 13-year-olds who are playing with it. It's an instrument of death, but they're not smart enough to know that.
Next door, Jeff Simpson is telling Kenda a nearly identical story.
Jeff knows that the suicide story is off the table, so he realizes that he's got to say something that might be believed.
We were playing around with the gun, and somehow a bullet got back into it.
How did that happen?
I don't know. I handed it back to PJ, and it accidentally went off.
Guns do not have artificial intelligence. A revolver requires you to pull the trigger.
The fact that Jeff Simpson admits to holding the gun last makes Kenda fairly certain he's the one who shot PJ.
It's Jeff. It's not Adam. It's Jeff, by his own admission.
Was PJ standing when he was shot?
Yes.
Jeff, stop lying to me. We have blood evidence that shows that he wasn't at standing height when he was shot. And he wasn't shot at close range. Everything you've told me up until now has been a lie.
The evidence is clear and convincing that Jeff is lying. I explain that to him. I explain why it's so clear and why it's so convincing. And he cracks and says,
We were playing a game.
A game? What kind of game? At this point, we know that both of these boys have cracked and have come off their initial lies. They both admit that they were all handling the gun.
Did he accidentally shoot PJ, or did he intentionally shoot PJ?
We were playing a game.
What game?
PJ flashed us the gun and told us about a game called Russian Roulette. He said you put one bullet in the gun and you pull the trigger and see if it goes off. Dude.
You know, I think we've all heard of Russian roulette, you know, obviously. But they talk about it as the game, a game. And I think in their minds, that's what it was. It was a game. They didn't think about it in terms of life-changing, life-altering, somebody might get killed here kind of thing.
Russian roulette, it's a very stupid game because generally it ends up with somebody being dead. It's taking a revolver with one live round in the chamber, spinning the chamber, and taking a risk, holding the gun up to yours or somebody else's head, and pulling the trigger and hoping that you're on a 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 chance that you're on an empty round. But that's very poor odds when you're talking about somebody's life.
Russian roulette is so named because Russia is said to be the country where the game originated. And roulette is part of the game because the roulette wheel in gambling is spinning a white ball and betting on the number it falls on. Like you spin the cylinder of a gun and the white ball is the bullet. Your odds are 1 in 6 of coming up on a live chamber when you pull the trigger. But you put it to your own head when you do that. The game of Russian roulette is a game of suicide. That's not what happened here.
Did you put the gun to your head?
No.
What were you physically doing?
We were running around, laughing, chasing each other, pulling the trigger, almost like a game of tag.
The gun's not firing. He doesn't think there's any bullets in it. They run upstairs. They're still chasing each other. Jeff has the gun. PJ runs into the bathroom, and he trips and falls.
I tripped too, and the gun went off.
That could work with the physical evidence that they're both low to the ground. Guns don't accidentally discharge. It went off because Jeff pulled the trigger. The question remains, what was his mindset when he pulled that trigger? Was it purposeful or was it accidental?
Kenda continues to push Jeff for more details.
Jeff insists that he didn't think there were any bullets in the gun. It had 1 bullet in it. 1 was all that was necessary, as it turns out. PJ's dead before he hits the floor.
How'd the gun and bullets get in PJ's hands?
We put them there.
Oh my gosh, what happened?
It went off.
I thought there were no bullets. We need to call somebody.
No, we can't call anybody. Just let me think. Hold on.
They panic to the max. They're kids. They're trying to compensate for the lie they're going to tell. They put the gun next to his hand. They put bullets in his other hand.
We're going to say he committed suicide. We're going to put the gun here. We're going to put the bullets here. Just stage the scene.
Why'd you try to make this look like a suicide?
Because I was scared. I didn't mean to kill him.
All right, stay put. We'll have an officer come in.
Lieutenant.
What is it?
We got the trace back on the serial number on the firearm.
And?
It comes back to PJ Grant's neighbor. It was stolen from his house.
All right, thank you.
It is the weapon that caused PJ Grant's death. He brought that gun into that house. It wound up becoming the instrument of his own death, but he did bring the gun in, as both boys said he did.
I don't think any of these kids really understood the consequences of playing around with a gun.
With a confession in tow, Kenda and Ritz hand the case over to the district attorney.
Counselor?
Lieutenant,
How's the wife?
she's well. And Kathy?
She's doing good. I was just stopping by to see what your thoughts were on the Grant case.
You know, I was going to ask you that same question.
Well, it's a sad situation all around.
Are they going to be charged with a crime? Probably. But what type of crime are you going to charge them with?
We have no satanic cult and we have no motive. Where does that leave us?
I don't see any intent.
No, there wasn't. Tragic accident, kids playing with a gun. Now all 3 families have to deal with the consequences.
Are you going to destroy these young people's lives for the rest of their life? Was this a purposeful act designed to cause the death of the victim? Or was this an accidental event caused by 13-year-olds misbehaving while playing with a loaded firearm? In our considered opinion, it is the latter.
You know, in cases like this, no one wins.
The DA has to make the recommendation whether it's adult court or juvenile court. What we're seeing here in the maturity level of these kids, the lack of criminal intent, the choices made to put them into the juvenile court system.
Jeff Simpson is charged with 1 count of criminally negligent homicide and possession of a firearm by a minor. The maximum penalty under juvenile law is 2 years in custody, but the judge opts for probation instead. As for Adam Davis, no formal charges are brought against him.
There are degrees of murder. There are degrees of punishment. And in this particular case, I think we made the correct choice.
In spite of the tragedy, we're able to give 2 young boys another chance, and that hopefully they've used that to be successful adults and go on to live good lives.
They are adolescents.
The headline hits you like a siren at 3 a.m. Chicago 1979 cold case solved. 4 short words, but they rip open an old wound, drag you back to a winter the city never escaped. Before there was a headline, before there was a cold case, there was just one girl, one bus stop, one walk home that should have been nothing and became everything. Chicago West Side, December 7th, 1979. The air is knife cold, the kind that chews through wool and leather. Snow is no longer white, it's gray, chewed up by tires and boots, crusted with salt and exhaust. Streetlights throw small, lonely islands of orange onto cracked sidewalks. At the corner of Homan and Augusta, newspapers shout about inflation, hostages, gangs. Nobody prints a word about the quiet girl in the navy coat stepping off the number 70 bus at 9:42 p.m. Her name is Emily Carter, 22, student nurse, no record, no enemies, no drama, a paycheck, a stack of textbooks, a secondhand TV, a roommate who worries too much. She has less than 20 minutes left to exist as anything other than a file. You see her. Knit hat pulled low, breath fogging, leather bag tight to her side. She moves quickly out of habit. This neighborhood doesn't reward slow walkers after dark. She's made this trip 100 times. Hospital, bus, 3 blocks to the brownstone with the wheezing space heater and the crooked blinds. She's thinking about the pharmacology exam she's not ready for, the Christmas lights still tangled in their box, the double shift she agreed to cover. She is not thinking about words like mysterious disappearance, cold case, community in shock. The street is a broken chain of light and shadow. Somewhere a dog barks behind a fence, somewhere a siren rises, then fades. Emily's boots crunch across the frozen sidewalk, each step a small countdown nobody hears. Behind her the bus pulls away, a box of fluorescent safety sliding into the distance, leaving her alone with the wind and the dark and someone else's footsteps, soft and steady, far enough back that she doesn't turn around. The last person to truly see her is a cab driver stuck at the light, fingers drumming the steering wheel. AM radio buzzing about another robbery uptown. He glances right without thinking and catches a fragment of history. A young woman cutting between parked cars, head down, and a taller figure half a block behind, collar up, face swallowed by shadow. The light turns green, he drives on. 5 seconds of observation, a lifetime of regret he won't feel until the news comes on. At 10:11 p.m., in a 3rd-floor apartment that smells like tomato sauce and cigarettes, Emily's roommate checks the clock and frowns. Lisa knows her rhythms. Emily is never this late without calling. She waits 5 minutes, then 10, building excuses. Delayed bus, extra paperwork, quick stop for groceries. The phone stays silent on the counter, a black block of plastic that suddenly feels heavier than it did that morning. By 10:37, excuses are gone. Lisa calls the hospital. Emily clocked out on time. At 10:44, she calls Emily's parents in the suburbs. No, they haven't heard from her. Why? What's wrong? Lisa's voice shakes when she says, "I'm sure it's nothing." At 11:06, she sits on the kitchen floor because it's easier than standing, the TV chattering in the other room about celebrities and sports scores as if the world hasn't veered sideways. Officially, Emily Carter disappears somewhere between the bus stop and her front door. Unofficially, her disappearance begins the moment people who love her feel that electric, nauseating certainty that something is wrong and no one with a badge is moving fast enough. At 1:20 a.m., 2 beat cops knock on the apartment door, notebooks already half filled with other people's bad nights. They listen, they nod, they ask the questions they always ask. Was she depressed? Did she talk about leaving? Drugs? Boyfriend trouble? Any chance she just needed space? Lisa tells them Emily apologizes when she's 5 minutes late to coffee. She apologizes for sneezing too loud. She doesn't just vanish. The officers write it down with the flat, practiced faces of men who have heard every version of "she would never" the city can produce. They promise to file the report. They tell her to call if she hears anything. The door shuts. The hallway swallows their footsteps. The apartment feels colder. On paper, Emily becomes a missing person report. One more sheet in a stack on a metal desk, 5'4", brown hair, brown eyes. Last seen wearing navy coat, dark denim, white sneakers, gray knit hat. No known enemies. No history of running away. The boxes are checked. The form is stamped. The words mysterious disappearance aren't there. The form doesn't have a space for dread. No one in that room says the phrase cold case. Nobody thinks they should. Morning doesn't care who went missing overnight. Elevated trains scream past soot-stained platforms. Factories cough to life. Kids drag backpacks through slush and ice. But inside the small radius between bus stop and brownstone, something subtle shifts. Shopkeepers lift metal grates more slowly and talk in shorter sentences. Mothers walk their kids to school instead of letting them go alone. The corner bar keeps the radio news on just a little louder. A 30-second bulletin runs on local stations before most people have finished their coffee. Young nurse. Failed to return home from shift. Family concerned. Anyone with information, call. It hangs in the air like exhaust and then disappears, replaced by weather and traffic and hockey scores. Most listeners assume it'll work out. A misunderstanding, a runaway, a story that ends with a relieved family and a hug on camera. It usually does, until it doesn't. Detectives don't land on the case right away. This is 1979 Chicago. The city bleeds from a dozen open wounds. Homicides, armed robberies, gang wars, overdoses. Every squad room corkboard is a collage of faces, addresses, license plates, bad endings. A missing 22-year-old who might walk in tomorrow doesn't outrank a body on a sidewalk. Not yet. Uniforms canvass the route anyway. They knock on doors, hold up the photo. Did you see this girl? Heads shake, memories blur. One elderly woman insists she heard a scream a few nights ago, but she can't say which night or from which direction. A bartender says Emily stopped by a few times after shifts, still in scrubs, ordered ginger ale, made quick calls from the payphone, left fast. Nice kid, he says, looked over her shoulder a lot. Nobody writes that part down, but it lingers in the air like cigarette smoke. The cab driver's half memory enters the file. Male maybe, taller than the girl, dark coat, no face, no car, no plate. A shadow that walked a half block behind and never stepped into the light. It's thin, but it's something, and in a city of ghosts, even a maybe goes on the board. Days drag, the snow darkens. Flyers appear on bus shelters, church doors, laundromats. Emily Carter, missing. The only decent photograph her parents can find quickly is from a school yearbook. It makes her look younger than she is, more teenager than nurse. Lisa hates it. To her, it's all wrong. Hair, clothes, that frozen, practiced smile, but it becomes the face the city recognizes, taped above payphones and pinned in break rooms. Reporters start to circle. First it's a local paper, then a TV producer who likes words like mystery and vanished. A camera crew arrives. The neighborhood looks different through their lens, more broken, more dangerous, more like a backdrop for fear. That night an anchor says, young nurse disappears on way home from work. Community shocked. Viewers miles away glance at their daughters, sisters, girlfriends, and tell themselves, not here, not us. Then on the fifth day, the story changes. Tuesday afternoon, low clouds, dirty snow, sleet like needles. Two schoolboys cut across the back lot of an abandoned factory on their way home because kids always go where they're told not to. The building is a hollow brick shell with busted windows and a reputation no one can quite define. Once it made machine parts. Now it makes trouble. They climb a cracked concrete stairwell that smells like rust and stale smoke, flashlights slicing through dust. On the second floor, in a graffiti-tagged room, they see a navy coat crumpled in the corner, dusted with plaster and ice. One boy jokes there's probably a drunk sleeping under it. The other moves the beam higher, and the joke dies in his throat. They know the face from the flyers. By 4:19 p.m., the block is clogged with blue and white squad cars, an ambulance, and the medical examiner's van. Yellow tape blooms across the factory entrance, snapping in the wind like a warning flag. Neighbors collect in knots on the sidewalk, arms crossed tight against the cold, eyes fixed on the second-floor windows. The reporters who came for a missing person story suddenly have something darker. Body found in abandoned building. Within hours, the language hardens. Mysterious homicide, possible predator. Community on edge. The city doesn't need facts to be afraid. It just needs an image, a stretcher, a sheet, a father collapsing in the street. Detective Frank Delaney stands just inside the doorway of that second-floor room, coat unbuttoned, tie crooked, hands deep in his pockets, so no one sees the small shake in his fingers. He's seen too many bodies in too many forgotten rooms, but something about this one refuses to sit quietly in the back of his mind. Maybe it's the navy coat folded carefully beside her instead of ripped away. Maybe it's the white sneakers, small and clean, set neatly side by side as if waiting. Maybe it's the hospital badge still clipped to her shirt, The plastic rectangle that still insists Emily Carter, student nurse, like the scene hasn't caught up to the reality. The room is disturbingly orderly. No shattered glass, no overturned furniture, no violent spray on the walls. The medical examiner talks in a low voice about ligature marks, time of death, most likely the night she vanished. Anger, he says, but not panic. Whoever did this had control. Whoever did this walked out of here calm. Delaney feels the words settle like ice in his stomach. Then a uniform calls him over to the far wall. At first, he sees nothing but cracked plaster and old paint. Then the flashlight angles just right, and it's obvious. 3 shallow lines carved side by side at about shoulder height. Not letters, not numbers. Each scratch is roughly 2 inches long, straight and careful, as if someone took their time pressing metal into stone. It could be nothing, kids with knives, bored vandals, but the dust scattered beneath is fresh, pale against the grime. Delaney stares at those 3 lines and feels his pulse climb. He's seen every kind of graffiti, gang tags, satanic symbols, obscene doodles. This isn't loud like that. This is quiet, precise, deliberate. The kind of mark a person leaves when they want to remember or be remembered. Not a shout, a whisper. Down on the street, cameras roll as the stretcher emerges. All the city sees is a black bag and the devastated face of a father who has to be held upright by 2 officers. Microphones lunge forward. A reporter asks if he thinks the police moved fast enough. He doesn't answer, but the look he sends toward the squad cars is enough fuel for every police under pressure script that airs that night. No one says cold case yet. Not on television, not in the squad room, not in the hallways of the courthouse, but in another precinct drawer miles away, there is an old, dust-heavy file from 2 winters earlier. Another young woman, another abandoned building, another set of photographs, and in one of those photographs, a gray wall marked with 3 quiet, parallel scratches no one ever had a good explanation for. In another building across town, in a room that smells like coffee that's been burned twice and paper that's been handled too many times, a clerk slides open a metal drawer and drags out a tan folder with the kind of reluctance usually reserved for exhumations. The tab reads, Miller, Janice, 1977. The ink is faded. The paper is stiff. It hasn't been touched in months, maybe years, until now. Delaney stands over the table, coat still on, the cold from the factory room clinging to him like a second skin. He opens the folder and the past spills out in grainy black and white. A young woman on a concrete floor, hair fanned out, hands placed just so. No purse, no shoes. The first photo of the wall looks like nothing at first. Then you see them, 3 shallow, parallel scratches just high enough that someone standing could reach. The same quiet vandalism, the same careful lines, different year, different girl, same ghost. Janice Miller, 23, waitress, night school student, went missing on her way home from a late shift in January 1977. Blizzard wind, icy sidewalks. She never made it to her front door. 5 days later, some kids sneaking cigarettes in an emptied-out laundromat found her. The case burned hot for a few weeks. News crews outside the crime scene, headlines about West Side horror, cops checking every creep with a record and a bad alibi. Then the snow melted. New bodies turned up, and the city did what cities do best. It moved on. The folder slid to the back of the drawer. The name sank into the background noise of unsolved violence. Now in 1979, that name crawls back into the light. Delaney flips through the pages, handwriting from detectives who've aged out, retired, died, or simply stopped believing old stories matter. No weapon recovered. No sexual assault evidence that led anywhere. No usable fingerprints. A few vague witness statements, man in a dark coat, car idling near the alley, footsteps in the snow, and then, stapled at the back, a single sheet almost as an afterthought, unidentified markings on east wall, possibly unrelated. 3 lines sketched in ballpoint, no follow-up. He calls in his partner for this one, a younger detective named Ortiz, who still believes late nights and fresh coffee can fix anything. Ortiz stares at the photos, the scratches, the neatness of the scene, the way both girls look like they were arranged instead of left. You think same guy? He asks. Delaney doesn't say yes, but he doesn't say no. Same neighborhood, same age, same walk home, same kind of grave, he mutters. If it's not the same guy, then this city's got more than one ghost who likes neat lines. News doesn't move like it used to. There's no internet, no instant outrages, but rumors don't need wires. They use mouths. They use bar stools and church steps and bus stops. Within days, the story shifts shape. 2 girls, 2 winters, 2 abandoned buildings. Pattern is the new word. Series. Predator. Radio talk shows use the phrase cold case connection and say it like they invented it. A columnist writes about the West Side Shadow, and the name sticks just long enough to scare parents and sell papers. The department hates it. No chief wants the word serial attached to his city. It suggests failure. It suggests someone has been working the streets under their noses for years. At a closed-door briefing, the brass tell the detectives to work the angle carefully, to avoid panic, to control the narrative. But narratives are like blood and water. Once they're out, something swims toward them. Back in Emily's neighborhood, the fear is no longer abstract. Women change their routes. Neighbors start walking in pairs. Hardware stores sell out of deadbolts and chain locks. Self-defense flyers appear on bulletin boards next to missing posters. In living rooms, people click off crime dramas because real life has become enough of one. The Carters sit at their kitchen table with Delaney one evening, the photographs untouched in a manila envelope between them. Emily's mother keeps looking at it like there's a chance this is all a mistake, and the envelope actually holds something else, an apology, a different girl, a different ending. Her father's face has the same look Delaney has seen on veterans and widowers, as if the air around them has thickened and will never fully clear. He tells them what he can, timelines, forensics, witnesses, the link they're exploring to the older case, but every sentence feels thin next to the enormity of the absence in their apartment. They ask the question every family asks, the one no detective can answer honestly without sounding cruel. Do you think you'll catch him? Delaney says, we're going to do everything we can. It's the truth, and also he knows not nearly enough. Tips begin to flood in because fear always has opinions. A caller swears he saw Emily arguing days before with a man in a tan sedan, but he can't recall the plate or the model. Another says she noticed a guy hanging around the bus stop all week, lurking behind a news box, always lighting a cigarette but never finishing it before the bus came. A man calls twice insisting he heard a woman scream near the factory the night Emily disappeared, but his times don't match and his story keeps changing. The detectives peel each tip apart like bad wallpaper, looking for something solid beneath the noise. Then, late on a Wednesday night, the homicide desk gets a call that freezes every conversation around it. The voice on the other end is male, medium pitch, calm, almost bored. He doesn't give a name. He doesn't respond to the operator's questions. He just starts talking. I saw the nurse, he says, the one from TV. She didn't suffer, not the way you think. There's a rustle, maybe a coat, maybe paper. He mentions the factory, the way the snow looked through the broken windows, the draft in the stairwell. Details that haven't been released yet. He says, you're looking at the wrong buses. And then, before anyone can patch in a trace, he chuckles softly and adds, 3 lines, 3 marks, 3 mistakes, and hangs up. The room erupts. Phones slam. Wires connect. The tape is replayed twice, 3 times, over again. Ortiz scribbles down every word. Delaney listens with his eyes closed, trying to memorize the rhythm, the pauses, the almost lazy rise and fall in the man's tone. Not angry, not gloating exactly, something else. Detached, like an announcer reading a score. The trace fails. The call bounced through a payphone on the south side that's clean when they get there 2 hours later, except for a smear of oil and a cigarette butt trampled into the slush. Lab pulls nothing useful. The voice goes into evidence, into the file, into the nightmares of the people who heard it. Press doesn't hear about the call, at least not right away. What they do hear is that the detectives are re-interviewing witnesses from 1977 and combing through old files. A young reporter from a local station, hungry for a break, corners Delaney outside the precinct, microphone in his face, camera light in his eyes. Detective, are you investigating a serial killer targeting young women on the west side? She asks. There it is, the word no one wants to say out loud, serial. Delaney knows the game. Say yes, and he feeds a monster he can't control. Say no, and he's lying to the people he's supposed to protect. He gives the answer somewhere in between, the kind that sounds like information, but isn't. We're looking at all possible connections, he says. We're asking anyone with information to come forward. It's a plea wrapped in a non-answer. It plays on the evening news sandwiched between a piece on a mayoral scandal and sports highlights. Inside the station, the pressure ratchets up. They form a small task group. They pin photos of both victims on the board, Janice and Emily, 2 faces looking past everyone in the room. Maps go up, colored strings trace the last known routes. Times are marked, bus schedules cross-referenced, weather records pulled. They dig into cashier logs from corner stores, coin count records from payphones, maintenance reports from the factory and laundromat. It's slow, tedious work. The opposite of what TV shows later will make it look like. No dramatic montage, just men and women hunched over tables, drowning in paper. A name emerges, not because it glows red on a map or rings like a confession, but because it pops up twice in places it shouldn't. A night janitor, mid-30s. Prior convictions for assault and breaking and entering, all plea bargained down. Used to work at the laundromat where Janice was found. Recently did short-term maintenance gigs near the factory. He lives alone in a basement apartment with 2 locks and curtains always drawn. They bring him in, not in cuffs yet. Just come down, help us out, clear a few things up. He sits in the interview room with a posture that screams he's sat in similar rooms before. He knows where the camera is. He knows where the mic is. He stares at the table and answers in one-word bursts. Yes, he remembers Janice from the neighborhood. No, he never saw her that night. Yes, he worked at the laundromat, but not the week she died. No, he doesn't know anything about the factory. Yes, he takes the bus sometimes. Why? No, he doesn't know any nurse. No, he doesn't know what 3 scratches you're talking about. They push, they prod, they leave him alone with his thoughts and the stale air and the humming fluorescent light. He doesn't crack. Not in the way people on television do. No breakdown, no confession, no sudden emotional outpouring. Just the kind of stubborn, quiet denial that may belong to a guilty man or a tired, innocent one who's seen his share of rooms like this and decided he's not giving anyone anything extra. They search his apartment anyway. They find tools, rope, work boots, a stack of old car magazines, a drawer half full of unsent letters, most of them angry and rambling and never addressed. They find nothing that ties him concretely to either scene. No fibers, no blood, no trophies, no secret box under the bed with IDs and jewelry and photographs like in the movies. Just a life that's messy and sad and maybe violent, but not neatly connected to this. The DA wants more, needs more. Without it, they have nothing but coincidence and bad vibes. That doesn't hold in court. The janitor walks. Not with an apology, not with any regained social standing. Those things don't exist for a man dragged, even briefly, into this kind of spotlight. But he walks. The detectives are back to a ghost and 3 scratches on 2 different walls. On the west side, the story burrows deeper into everyday routines. Parents use it as a warning. Don't stay out late. Don't walk alone. You heard what happened to that nurse. Bars keep TVs tuned to the news, sound low, patrons pretending not to listen while they sip beer and watch clips of squad cars and sobbing families out of the corners of their eyes. Church sermons mention vigilance. Newspapers switch from pictures of Emily to pictures of angry crowds. One headline screams, "Mystery killer taunts city. Cops stymied." Somewhere in that city, in a room nobody has looked at twice, someone watches all of this unfold. Maybe he leans against a kitchen counter, coat still on, the television's blue light turning his features into a mask. Maybe he reads the paper in the back booth of a diner, coffee cooling untouched, eyes skipping past sports scores to the small column that mentions 3 scratches on a wall and whispers about a connection to an older case. Maybe he walks right past one of Emily's missing posters, still taped to a light pole because no one has found the heart to take it down, and lets his fingers brush the edge of the paper without stopping. Delaney doesn't know him, not yet. He only knows the outline, someone who understands the neighborhood, who knows which buildings are empty and which ones police check regularly, someone who moves comfortably between bus routes and alleys, someone who likes order enough to fold a coat and line up shoes and carve neat parallel marks into plaster, someone who is patient, someone who might have started long before 1977, someone who might not be done. Weeks turn into months, leads thin out. Emily's face appears less frequently on television, then not at all. The flyers curl and fade, ink bleeding under rain and sun. The task group shrinks as detectives are reassigned to fresher crimes, hotter cases, bodies that just hit the ground an hour ago. The board in the squad room with Emily and Janice's photos gets pushed 2 feet to the left to make room for new faces. When the chief walks through, he nods at it the way people nod at memorials, quick, respectful, already moving on. But the case doesn't go away. It sinks, it hardens, it becomes weight. Every few weeks, Delaney pulls the folders out again. He runs his finger over the same notes, the same maps, the same photographs until the edges start to soften. He listens to the tape of the caller, memorizes the cadence, the little half laugh before the man says 3 marks. He drives the route from the hospital to the bus stop to Emily's building late at night, his car rolling slowly past the exact spot where the bus doors hissed open and closed and nobody realized they were watching the last normal moments of a life. He stands outside the abandoned factory and stares up at the dark windows until his breath turns his reflection into a ghost on the glass. The file grows by inches, not by answers but by more questions. At the back of the folder, paper clips holding together notes about other missing women in the area over the last decade. Some found, some not. Some ruled suicides, runaways, domestic disputes. Some never ruled anything at all. Little dots on a map that might mean nothing, or might form a shape nobody wants to recognize. People stop calling it the West Side Shadow after a while. The city forgets nicknames faster than it forgets victims. But the story doesn't vanish. It changes address. It moves into whispers, into late-night conversations, into the space between elevator floors when someone says, "Do you remember that nurse, the one they found in that factory?" And someone else says, "Yeah, they never caught that guy, right?" And then the doors open and everyone walks out pretending they feel nothing crawling up the back of their neck. Years will go by. Records will be boxed, evidence will yellow, witnesses will move away, die, forget. A new generation will grow up walking past that old factory without knowing what happened on the second floor. But somewhere, on a shelf in a quiet room that smells of dust and old anxiety, there will still be a folder marked Carter Emily, 1979. And right beside it, a folder marked Miller Janice, 1977. Two files that never really closed. Two stories that refused to end. Two sets of three faint parallel lines on two different walls, waiting for someone, someday, to notice they are not the beginning, not the end, but the middle of something much larger. By the mid-'80s, Chicago wears a different mask, but underneath it, the same scars. Neon signs buzz over new bars, shoulder pads stride past old brick, synth music spills from car radios where once it was disco and rock. But in one forgotten corner of a records room, nothing has changed. Two tan folders sit side by side, their tabs curling slightly with age. Miller, Janice, 1977. Carter, Emily, 1979. The dust on them is new. The grief inside is not. Delaney is older now. The gray at his temples has spread, his tie is permanently loosened, and his knees complain every time he takes the station stairs too fast. He's collected new cases, new ghosts, new names that refuse to stay buried. But the two young women on the board, those photographs he once pinned up with fresh resolve, never left his peripheral vision. They just shifted from front row to background, like a song you don't hear anymore until it shows up in the middle of the night and you remember every word. On a rainy afternoon in 1984, a memo lands on his desk, like an omen disguised as bureaucracy. The header talks about forensic advancements, DNA typing, pilot programs, new technology borrowed from labs and universities, whispered about in conferences and articles nobody actually reads all the way through. The idea is simple in theory and terrifying in practice. A tiny biological trace, invisible to the eye, can point a finger more reliably than any shaky eyewitness. For most detectives, it's science fiction. For Delaney, it's a word scrawled in the margin of possibility, maybe. He signs up to sit through a briefing. The room is filled with skeptical faces, arms crossed, cops who have spent their careers relying on confessions, fingerprints, ballistics, the weight of a hunch. A man in a lab coat explains base pairs and markers and probabilities. He talks about samples, degradation, chain of custody. Most of it sails over heads like smoke, but then he says something that cuts through the fog. This could change how we handle unsolved cases. Old evidence might tell new stories. Unsolved, cold, old winters frozen in boxes. Later in the evidence warehouse, Delaney walks the aisles like a man visiting a cemetery. Shelves groan under the weight of sealed bags, cardboard boxes, and tagged containers, each one a frozen moment of someone's worst day. He finds the boxes by number, not by name. Miller, Carter, two separate shelves, same dim light. He lifts each box carefully like it might break. Inside, clothing, swabs, photographs, a wallet, scraps of tape, a cigarette butt from a stairwell, dust scraped from a windowsill. The scent is chemical and old. Time has seeped in anyway, a quiet rot you can't see but can feel. Evidence from the 70s wasn't collected with future miracles in mind. It was collected with flashbulbs and ink, with the assumption that if you didn't catch the guy in months, you probably never would. He signs the chain of custody forms, initials and dates stacking up like a palimpsest of hope and failure, and delivers the boxes to the lab. The techs look at him like he's delivered a relic. Early cases, poor storage, unknown contamination. The odds are thin enough to see through. Still, he asks them to try. They shrug and say they will. There's no ticking clock on cold cases, just a slow, grinding impatience. Weeks turn into months, the city keeps bleeding. Arson uptown, gang shooting in Pilsen, domestic triple homicide in a tidy bungalow where no one ever raised their voice loud enough for the neighbors to worry. Delaney is dragged from scene to scene, crime tape to crime tape, his notebook filling with names that are new to him, but will one day be as old as Janice and Emily's. He checks with the lab when he remembers. Any news? Any luck? Any miracle? The answers come in two kinds, nothing yet, and we're still looking. Both mean the same thing. Then, late one Friday, as most of the building empties out for the weekend, a lab tech appears at his desk with a manila envelope and an expression that's not exactly triumphant but not exactly resigned either. Something in between. Got something on your old ones, he says. Sort of. Inside the envelope, a report, technical language, marker alleles, partial profiles, limitations. At the bottom, the part that matters, trace biological material recovered from both scenes. Not enough for a full, court-ready genetic fingerprint, not enough to drop a name on a warrant and kick down a door, but enough to say something definitive in the gray world of maybe. The same man had contact with both victims. The words sit there on the page, clinical and calm, while inside Delaney's chest something lurches. It's not surprise, it's confirmation. The ghost he suspected was one man now has a single, invisible thread tying him to both Winters. The 3 scratches weren't just a coincidence. The similar staging wasn't just the city playing cruel games. There was, once, a real breathing man who touched Janice in 1977 and Emily in 1979 and walked away undetected. He takes the report home that night instead of leaving it in his drawer. It sits on his kitchen table beside a stack of unpaid bills and a plate he doesn't have the appetite to wash. The TV mutters in the other room. Someone is laughing on a sitcom. A canned audience, amused by nothing. He stares at the words until they blur. In theory, this is progress. In practice, it's a locked door that is shifted 1 inch but still won't open. They have a partial genetic profile in an era when that phrase means almost nothing. There's no database yet, no nationwide grid humming with DNA points waiting to light up a match. They have a ghost described in microscopic code and nowhere to compare him to. Still, the asterisk on the report plants a seed in the department. Future comparison recommended. Future, a word that has never belonged to Janice or Emily before. Outside, Chicago keeps changing outfits. The 80s thicken into the 90s. Music changes, haircuts change. The skyline grows teeth. Old factories are gutted, repainted, turned into artist lofts, or left to crumble entirely. The one where they found Emily becomes a hollowed reminder, windows boarded, ground floor tagged with new graffiti in brighter colors than the city ever saw in '79. Kids on skateboards grind along its front steps without knowing what the second floor once held. Delaney ages out. Retirement isn't a single day for him. It's a long slope he spends years sliding down. First, he stops taking night calls. Then they move him from active cases to review, from pounding on doors to pushing paper across a desk. He's good at it, surprisingly. He has a memory like a map. He remembers faces, patterns, mistakes. Younger detectives start dropping old files on his desk with phrases like, "Thought you might know something about this one," and "Didn't you work anything similar back then?" He keeps the Carter and Miller files close, even when they shift into the category everyone says, but nobody writes down, very cold. When the party in the break room marks his last official day, someone jokes about his museum of old cases. He laughs along. Later, at home, he doesn't sleep. The past has lost its leash. That same year, far from the parties and plaques, a second quiet revolution happens in an office with humming computers and metal shelves that smell of ethanol and sleeplessness. The state begins building its DNA database brick by invisible brick. Felons have their cheeks swabbed as they're processed. Old samples, where possible, are pulled from storage, cataloged, digitized. The partial profile from one West Side predator becomes a short series of numbers in a field on a screen, labeled with a case number and the words unidentified male. Unidentified but no longer uncounted. By the mid-90s, a new breed of detective has grown up inside the department. Men and women who learn to type reports on computers, who believe in cell phone records, who see DNA not as a miracle but as part of the everyday toolkit. Among them is Detective Sarah Quinn, early 30s, sharp eyes, sharper memory. She grew up in a South Side apartment where the evening news was always on, and certain stories lodged deeper than others. A nurse found in an abandoned building, 3 scratches on a wall. A father who said, "This city never caught that animal," and a mother who said, "That's why you don't walk alone, ever." Quinn volunteers for the cold case unit the first chance she gets. Most don't. It's not glamorous. There are no live crime scenes, no fresh tire tracks in mud, no crowds pressing against tape, just boxes, just dust, just the heavy silence of unfinished business. But she likes puzzles where half the pieces are missing. She likes the idea that time isn't always the enemy. Sometimes it's an accomplice. On a Monday morning thick with rain, she pulls a box at random from the shelf they call the graveyard. The label says Carter, Emily. She recognizes the name before she touches it. Memory flashes. TV glow on her childhood couch, the word mysterious homicide in an anchor's grave voice. Her father muttering, "They'll never find him now, it's been too long." Time, it seems, has brought the case back around, to her. She reads the file the way some people read novels, in one long, breathless stretch. The handwritten notes, the photocopied bus schedules, the photographs of a girl who looks like every student nurse she's ever seen hustling through hospital corridors. The other file pulled on instinct from the adjacent shelf. Miller, Janice. Same style of crime, same rough geography, same marks on the wall sketched in a tired detective scrawl. Old interviews, no longer reachable phone numbers, addresses turned into parking lots and coffee shops. Then she finds Delaney's addendum, typed on a real typewriter in the mid-'80s. The DNA note, the partial link, the frustration hidden between the lines. She flips to the lab report and feels a shiver that's half dread, half excitement. Partial profile. Future comparison recommended. Back then, the future was a long, dim hallway. For her, it's a door 3 floors down in the same building. She walks into the modern lab, all bright lights and humming machines, carrying the old files like holy texts. The texts pull the digital record, the old partial profile, the identifier that's been sitting in the state database for years, waiting. They tell her what Delaney never had. There is now something to compare it to. Thousands of somethings, tens of thousands, profiles from convicted offenders logged line by line, year by year. A hit will not be guaranteed. Too little material, degradation. Sometimes the numbers don't line up cleanly enough to say anything more than maybe. But maybe in 1995 is not the same as maybe in 1979. Maybe is now a search string, not a dead end. They run it. The computer's progress bar crawls. It doesn't care about emotions. It doesn't know Janice or Emily or the small cascade of lives shattered by their absence. It just stretches and compares, checks and rejects, hums and thinks in a language of probabilities. No full match. Not that day, not yet. But something happens in the background in a separate corner of the system. A notification flags the old profile as eligible for future automated rechecks. Every time the database grows, every time a new offender is added, the ghost in the machine will be compared again, silently, relentlessly. There will be no clerk to forget to pull the folder, no detective to retire and take his memory with him. A tireless algorithm will keep asking the same question over and over. Does anyone new look like the man who bled into those scenes? Quinn doesn't walk out with a name. She walks out with a promise that outlives shifts in budgets and public interest. She updates the file with her own note. Profile entered into CODIS, periodic recheck ongoing. Another detective's voice added to the chorus. At home that night, she does what she swore she wouldn't do. She looks up old clippings, jumps into the archive room, cranks the microfilm, watches history unspool in black and white. Grainy photos of Emily's parents, a younger Delaney with fewer lines on his face. Headlines that scream, mystery killer taunts city, then grow smaller, then vanish altogether, replaced by other tragedies that had their moment and then slipped into the noise. She drives out to the old factory, now more ruin than structure. The boards over the windows are tagged with names of kids who weren't born when the building became a tomb. A chain-link fence leans around the lot, as if tired of standing guard. She sits in her car, engine idling, wipers ticking back and forth across a windshield spattered with late autumn drizzle. She pictures a young nurse in a navy coat, a janitor who wasn't quite right but wasn't quite the one. A man who called the station once and spoke in a voice that thought it was untouchable. She whispers, "We're not done," to no one in particular, and the rain slaps back against the glass like an answer. On the other side of the city, in a modest house with a sagging porch, an old man named Frank Delaney watches a different storm through his own window. His knees ache. His hands tremble just enough to annoy him when he holds his coffee cup. The television is on, but muted. Closed captions march under the flickering images. He's not listening. Instead, his eyes drift, as they always do, to a small corkboard on the far wall. It doesn't hold family photos or vacation postcards. It holds copies. Janice, Emily. Two faces staring out across 20 years like no time has passed at all. His phone rings sometimes with young detectives' voices on the other end. "Hey Frank, got a weird one on the west side. Thought maybe you'd seen something similar back in the day." He gives advice. He shares war stories. Sometimes he adds, "You ever come across scratches on a wall? 3 lines parallel?" Most of the time the answer is no. Once, a pause, a maybe, another dead lead. He doesn't know that a woman in his old department pulled his cases off a shelf today. He doesn't know that the invisible blueprint of the man he hunted is now floating in circuits and servers instead of just in his head. He doesn't know that somewhere, a number that didn't match anyone this morning might find a partner in 10, 15, 20 years. He just knows what every cop who ever carried a cold case to retirement knows. Some stories refuse to end. They sit, they wait, they gather dust and power in equal measure. In the city's files, Carter and Miller remain open, unsolved, unresolved. On paper, they're lines of text. In living rooms and memories, they're warnings, whispers, urban legends. Nurses still walk to bus stops. Janitors still mop hallways of old buildings. Men in dark coats still pass unnoticed under broken streetlights. But somewhere in the humming dark of a growing database, an invisible hand keeps reaching, searching, running the numbers again and again, preparing, quietly, for the day a new entry will slip into place and trigger a different kind of headline. Chicago 1979 cold case solved. The hit doesn't come with fireworks. There's no siren, no blinking red light, no dramatic announcement over a PA system. It arrives the way big shifts always do in real life, quietly on a weekday afternoon when the sky is colorless and everyone is thinking about lunch. In a corner of the state crime lab, a machine finishes running its compulsion of comparisons and spits out a notification that looks like 100 others, except this one says what no one has seen before. Possible partial match, unidentified male, Carter Miller profile. The tech reads the screen twice, then a third time, just to be sure. It's 2003. The database is bigger now, louder, meaner. New laws have poured more profiles into the system. Burglars, assaulters, parolees. What used to be a small pool has become something closer to a crowded lake. Every addition is another stone thrown into dark water. Sometimes a ripple hits something that was dropped decades ago. The computer is cautious. It doesn't say match, it says candidate, probability, shared alleles, the kind of numbers that make scientists lean forward and detectives forget to breathe. The candidate is not some faceless ghost. He has a name, a date of birth, a list of mistakes that finally required a cheek swab. Lucas Hartley, male, white, born 1955, current address Indiana State Correctional Facility, in for burglary, assault, resisting. Prior addresses, 3 states, countless apartments, 1 cramped room on Chicago's west side in the late 70s. There it is. 1 line and a long, dry printout. Lived within half a mile of the bus stop where a 22-year-old nurse stepped off into darkness in December 1979. The lab flags it, the system logs it, an email goes out. In an office several miles away, Detective Sarah Quinn's screen pings. She opens the message and sees the name, the numbers, the small bureaucratic sentence that makes her heart thud against her ribs. Recommend human review for possible cold case linkage. She doesn't walk, she moves. Down the hall, up the stairs 2 at a time, through the glass door into the lab, like a storm in plain clothes. The techs are already printing the sheets. They've seen that look before, hope wrapped in anger. She grabs the file hard enough to crinkle the paper and scans it, lips moving silently as she reads the shared loci, the match probability, the cautionary disclaimers about partial profiles and degraded samples. It's not a slam dunk, it's not courtroom tight, it's not the clean, full profile match of cop shows and training videos. But it's enough to say this: if Lucas Hartley isn't their ghost, then their ghost has a twin brother he never mentioned. She pulls the Carter file again, the Miller file, drops them on her desk. The faces stare up, unchanged, a young nurse with soft eyes, a waitress with a defiant half-smile. Behind them, maps, typed reports, Delaney's annotations, the note about the partial profile he could never use. She pulls the old DNA report and the new one side by side, bridging decades with paper. The dates line up. Hartley in Chicago from 75 to 81, bouncing between jobs, factory, warehouse, janitorial. Addresses in walking distance of both dump sites. Arrested twice back then for bar fights, disturbing the peace, but nothing serious enough to stick, nothing serious enough to fingerprint him into a future machine's memory. No one saw a predator. They saw a loud drunk, another guy with bad luck and a temper. The city was full of them. Quinn checks his age in 77, 22, in 79, 24, young enough to be invisible, old enough to be dangerous. He left Chicago around the time Emily's case went cold, drifted through Ohio, Michigan, Indiana. Petty crimes followed like a low drum beat. Nothing that said killer in bold letters, enough that if anyone had looked closely, they might have wondered why trouble stuck to him wherever he went. She doesn't wonder, she suspects, hard. The first thing she does is walk down a different hall, into a smaller, quieter office where dust hangs like memory and the air feels private. She knocks once out of habit, then pushes the door open before anyone answers. The desk inside is tidy. The man behind it is older than the last time she saw him give a talk at the academy. His hair has thinned, the lines around his mouth have deepened, but his eyes, when they flick up, are still the same guarded blue. "Detective Quinn," he says, recognizing her in segments. "You're supposed to call before you show up and ruin my peaceful retirement shuffling paper." "Peaceful, my ass," she shoots back, dropping the new file on his desk like a verdict. "You still got your board at home." He doesn't answer that. He flips the folder open, sees the name, scans the summary. It doesn't take long. He's fluent in this language. When he reaches the line about Hartley's West Side address, something shifts in his jaw. Years fall away in inches. "Where's the lab work?" he asks. She points. He reads the numbers, the caution, the probability ranges, sets the sheet down slowly. "How strong?" "Not trial strong," she says. "Not yet, but it's more than smoke. We've got a partial from both scenes, and this guy's profile keeps showing up in the overlap, enough to knock on a door or a cell." He leans back, chair creaking, eyes not leaving the pages. "He's locked up now?" "Indiana, doing time for beating a man half to death in a bar parking lot. This was the sample they took when he went in." She hesitates, then adds, "He fits the window, the geography, disposable jobs, no spouse, no kids listed, moved a lot. He lived 3 blocks from that laundromat where Janice was found, 2 blocks from the route Emily walked home." He's quiet for a long moment. The building hums around them, phones ringing, footsteps in the hallway, a fax machine coughing somewhere down the corridor. Finally he says, "You know what happens when you walk into a prison with a maybe. She does. A man who's already caged has nothing to lose by lying, and nothing obvious to gain by telling the truth. Confessions in that environment come tainted by deals, by fantasies, by third-hand stories someone picked up in the yard. A guy like Hartley could have seen a documentary, read a clipping, made himself a star in a story that isn't his. But I also know what happens if we do nothing, she replies. He gets out. In a year, 5, 10, the paper calls him a reformed burglar. The system calls him free. And if it is him, if he did this, we hand him back to the world wrapped in a bow. That lands. He pushes the chair back and stands, slower than he used to, but with purpose. You got a plan? He asks. Interview. Quiet. Just me, maybe one other. No cameras, no press. See if he knows things only the killer would know, she says. We bring the photos, the timelines. We don't mention the DNA. We let him talk. Who's the other? He asks. And when she hesitates, his mouth twitches into something close to a grim smile. Don't say it, he warns. You're not dragging an old warhorse across state lines to stare at a man who might just be a sore thumb in the data. She stares back, unblinking. You're the only one who's seen this from the beginning. You know the details they didn't put in reports, the stuff that never made it past the squad room. I can go without you, but if I walk into that prison and hear something you would have recognized and I miss it, that's on both of us. He looks at Janice's photo, at Emily's, at the margin notes written in his own crooked hand, at the new name typed in a newer, cleaner font. There's a reason his board is still on the wall at home. There's a reason he never put those files in a box in the attic. He sighs, the sound of a man giving in to something he never really wanted to let go of anyway. Fine, he says, but I'm not wearing a tie. The drive to Indiana is gray and flat. Highways lined with bare trees and billboards, truckers thundering past. Quinn pilots the unmarked sedan with the steady focus of someone watching both the road ahead and the rearview mirror of history. Delaney rides shotgun, file balanced on his knees, reading and rereading notes he could recite from memory. The radio stays off. There's nothing it can say that hasn't already been said. They pass the sign for the correctional facility, a low sprawl of concrete and steel, fenced in razor wire and bad decisions. Inside, the air hums with fluorescent lights and that unique blend of cleaner and sweat and stale fear that lives in institutions built to hold people against their will. They sign in, surrender phones, badges scanned, metal detectors wailing at belts and watches until everything extraneous is stripped away. Hartley is brought into a small interview room in cuffs. He's older than the photo in his file. Late 40s now, hair receding, a roughness baked into his skin that no shower can erase. Prison ages people asymmetrically. Some look boyish and brittle, some look ancient and carved. Hartley looks like a man who has been grinding his teeth for 20 years. He sits. The cuffs clink against the metal chair. He looks at Quinn, then at Delaney, measuring. Predators and prey share the same instinct, recognize threat, map escape routes even in places where there are none. Nobody told me why I'm here, he says, voice hoarse but steady. Said Chicago PD wanted to talk about something old. I don't remember much from old. Quinn slides a manila envelope across the table. Doesn't open it yet. You lived on Chicago's west side in the late 70s, she says. Worked a few jobs, laundromat, factory, janitorial work here and there. That ring a bell? He shrugs one shoulder. I lived a lot of places, worked a lot of crap jobs. That's supposed to be a crime? Not yet, she says. We're looking at a couple of unsolved cases from back then. Cold cases. We're talking to people who were in the area. He snorts a laugh that doesn't reach his eyes. That was, what, 25 years ago? You think I remember who lived where and who died? We're not asking you to remember everyone, Delaney says quietly, the first words he's spoken. Just 2 women. He opens the envelope, sliding out 2 photographs, pushing them into Hartley's line of sight. Janice, Emily, frozen, paused midlife. For a fraction of a second, something flickers across his face. Recognition, curiosity, or just the human reaction to any image of a person who's not there anymore. He covers it quickly with a smirk. You show all the guys these, he asks. Try to make us feel bad about our lives? These women were killed, Quinn says. We believe the same person was involved in both cases. The person lived and worked where you did. We're trying to figure out who that was. Wasn't me, he says, too fast, too flat. I never touched those girls. We never said how they died, Delaney says, eyes locked on him. We didn't say they were touched. Silence spreads, slow and thick. Hartley's jaw tightens. He looks away for a beat, then back. It's always the same with you people, he mutters. You mess something up back then, you get bored, then you come sniffing around guys like me because we're easy to find. Did we mess something up? Quinn asks quietly, like it's an honest question. He leans back, chains clinking. What do I know? I was busy breaking into cars and stealing TVs. You're the ones who left your monsters on the street. She studies him. The file says brawler, not mastermind. Impulsive violence, not calculated. But monsters don't come in types, they come in opportunities. She slides out a black and white photo of the 3 scratches on the factory wall, another from the laundromat. Ever seen marks like these? She asks. He glances, shrugs again. Kids with knives, bored drunks, who cares? We care, Delaney says. The edge in his voice is impossible to file down. We care because they showed up next to 2 dead women, 2 young women who never got to be older than those photos. Hartley holds his stare for a long time. Then he smiles, small and cold. I think you want me to say I did it, he says. I think you want a name so bad you don't care whose it is. You want to walk out of here, tell the families, we got him, and then sleep at night. Tie it up with a bow. Put solved on your reports. We want the truth, Quinn replies. The truth is, I was a lot of things, he says. I was an idiot. I was drunk. I was mean when I wanted to be. I hit people. I stole things. I broke stuff that wasn't mine. But killing girls, leaving little doodles on walls, that's not my art. He leans forward, chains pulling taut, and lowers his voice. But I remember those stories. Everyone did, back then. The nurse, the waitress. West Side Shadow. People talked in bars. Said the cops didn't know what they were doing. Said the guy probably left town. Got a new name. New life. Maybe he's a family man now. Maybe he's a preacher. Maybe he died in his sleep and you never even knew what bed he lay in. Quinn feels the temperature drop a degree. Why do you care? She asks. He shrugs. We all like a good story, even in here. He taps the photos with one finger. Those right there? That's the kind of story that keeps guys up at night. Not because they're scared of the killer. Because they're scared of being forgotten like that. Just a face on a yellowed page. She watches his hands. Big, scarred, calloused. Hands that have done damage. Hands that could have tied knots, dragged bodies, placed shoes side by side. She waits for some tell, some crack, some slip where knowledge leaks out that he shouldn't have. It doesn't come. He is either innocent or very, very good at playing dumb. They walk out with nothing overt, no confession, no new detail, just a man's contempt and a sense of something sour left in the air. Outside, the sky is the same flat gray it was when they drove in. At the perimeter fence, coils of razor wire glint like teeth. In the parking lot, Quinn leans against the car, eyes closed, forcing down the frustration that rises like bile. What do you think? She asks. Delaney stares back at the building, jaw set. I think I've stared at enough liars to know when someone's enjoying themselves, he says. He liked being in that room. He liked knowing we came all this way to look at him. But he didn't slip, not once. Not in the way I've seen killers slip when you hit the bone. So he's not our guy, she says, letting out a breath that feels like it's been trapped since the email landed. I didn't say that, Delaney replies. I said he didn't give us what we need. The numbers say he could be him. The story says he could be him, but stories and numbers aren't enough. Not for a jury, not even for me, not after this long. She opens the car door, stops, looks back at the prison. So what now? Now we do what we've been doing since '79, he says. We wait, we dig. We hope the city kept better records than we think. We trust that if he left his blood once, he might have left it somewhere else, somewhere more recent, somewhere we can get a clean match. The drive back is slower. Rain starts, thin at first, then thickening into sheets that blur the world into streaks of gray and red taillights. On the radio, a news break mentions budget cuts, a new stadium proposal, a missing teenager on the north side. Quinn listens, thinking about cycles. New missing girl, old missing girls. Headlines that seem the same no matter what year is printed in the corner. In the lab, Hartley's name gets a small star next to it in the database. Interviewed, denied involvement, no new info. The system doesn't care about smirks or cold eyes. It cares about alleles, markers, patterns. It files him away with a note for humans, not machines. Back in Chicago, the Carters and the Millers don't hear about Indiana. Nobody calls them to say, we might have had him and let him slip, or we might have stared at an innocent man for an hour. There's no room in their lives for that kind of conditional hope. They've learned the hard way that maybe can hurt more than no. Life moves, people age, move, marry, bury. The factory where Emily was found is finally demolished to make way for something new. A storage facility, the plans say. The laundromat where Janice died becomes a cheap convenience store with a buzzing fluorescent sign and aisles of chips and beer. Layers of paint cover old scars. New customers walk in and out without knowing what the walls once held. But underground, in humming rooms filled with servers and blinking lights, things are changing faster than anyone in those neighborhoods can see. The DNA database grows not by hundreds, but by hundreds of thousands. Technology sharpens. Tests that once produced partial, smudged pictures now produce clear portraits from smaller, older, more stubborn samples. Cold case units in cities across the country start dusting off evidence boxes and feeding them into machines that don't believe in the word impossible as much as their predecessors did. Somewhere in all that digital noise, the profile from 1979 waits. Its numbers don't change, its story does. Every time a new swab is added to the system, the same quiet question is asked again. Does this one match the man who walked home in the dark behind Janice Miller and Emily Carter? For years, the answer is no. Then, one ordinary morning, decades after a nurse stepped off a bus and vanished into a winter that never ended for her family, one of those humming machines spits out a different answer. Not maybe, not candidate. One word, blinking, blunt, undeniable. Match. The word is small, but it lands like an earthquake. Match. No qualifiers, no percentages, no cautious candidate language to hide behind. Just 4 letters, black on white, blinking in the status bar of a lab terminal on a Tuesday morning that was supposed to be like any other. The tech who sees it first doesn't shout, he just stops moving. Coffee halfway to his mouth, eyes fixed on the screen as if a wild animal has stepped into the room and any sudden motion might scare it away. The system has finished rerunning a batch of old profiles using extraction methods that didn't exist when those samples were first swabbed from skin and cloth and concrete. Among the noise, one line glows brighter than the rest. The unidentified male from the Carter-Miller profile now matches, clean and unequivocal, to an existing entry in the database. Not a new unknown, not a phantom, a man with a name. CODIS ID N55471LH, registered offender Hartley, Lucas J. The tech breathes out, sets the mug down without looking, and prints the report. It feels heavier than regular paper by the time it hits his hand. There's a protocol for this. Notify supervisor, cross-check, confirm there's no contamination, no lab error, no sample swap. They run it again, because science doesn't care about excitement. Same result, same name, same invisible thread tying a man sitting in some file to 2 young women buried decades ago. By noon, the email has reached Chicago. The subject line is sterile. CODIS hit, Carter-Miller, 1979-1977. But the effect it has when it pops up on Detective Sarah Quinn's screen is anything but. She clicks it open, reads the first paragraph, and feels her ribs go tight around her lungs. Full profile match. Previously partial. New analysis of original evidence. Probability of coincidental match effectively 0. Recommendation: immediate investigative follow-up and prosecutorial review. She doesn't sit. She's already in motion, grabbing the phone with one hand and the Carter file with the other. The old folder's edges are soft now. She's opened it too many times. Tell me this isn't a glitch, she snaps when the lab supervisor answers. Please tell me you triple-checked. We checked 5 times, the supervisor says. This isn't like 03. Back then we were stretching scraps. The re-extraction gave us a full profile. It's him. Same offender ID, same Hartley. You've got your guy Quinn. The words she's wanted to hear for years land with a force she didn't anticipate. You've got your guy. She should feel triumph, victory. Instead, she feels a deep, cold anger uncoil in her gut, because the next line in the report is a reminder that nothing in this story is clean. Subject released on parole 2012, current residence unknown, last known address, Gary, Indiana. For 9 years, if he is indeed their ghost, and the math says he is, Lucas Hartley has been breathing free air. Quinn walks straight past the buzzing hum of open-plan desks, every sheet of paper and ringing phone fading into a blur, and pushes through the glass door into the office that used to belong to men like Delaney, and now, technically, belongs to her. Cold Case Unit Lead. It's a title she wears like armor. Today it feels more like a weight. She spreads the fresh lab report on her desk, beside Delaney's old typed memo about the partial profile, beside the interview transcript from Indiana where Hartley smirked and shrugged and said, "That's not my art." The years between the documents collapse into one long and raging line. They had him in a room, they had him in a cage, and the science wasn't ready yet. She picks up the phone again. Another number, memorized, dialed without looking. It rings longer than she expects. When the line clicks, the voice on the other end is thinner than she remembers, but steady. "Hello?" "Mr. Delaney," she says. "It's Quinn." A pause, then a hint of dry humor. "You only call me Mr. Delaney when you're about to ruin my day." She doesn't waste words. "We reran the Carter and Miller evidence, new tech, higher yield. CODIS just gave us a full match." She hears her own voice, level but vibrating underneath. "It's Hartley. Confirmed." Silence. Not the confused kind, the stunned kind. She pictures him in that small house with the sagging porch, standing by the window where he always watches weather and ghosts, his hand going slack at his side. When he speaks, the sound is rough. "You're sure?" "The lab says the chance it's someone else is essentially 0, she replies. "It's him, Frank. The same guy we sat across from in that prison. The same one who laughed about us wanting a neat ending." There's a creak on the line, like a chair shifting. "Where is he?" Delaney asks. "Paroled in 2012, she says. "Last known address in Gary. Parole supervision ended. He's off paper. No current contact info in the system." "So he could be anywhere," Delaney says quietly. "Doing anything." "Yeah," she says. The word tastes metallic. For a moment, neither of them speaks. The city hums on around them, oblivious. Somewhere, a train screeches into a station. Somewhere, a siren cuts through traffic. the kind of sounds that framed the nights Janice and Emily died, looping endlessly over a city that never knew it should have been listening for one man's footsteps. "What do you need?" he asks finally. "I need you to come in," she says. "We're going to reopen everything, officially. We're going to build this for trial, not just closure. I want every note you never wrote down, every detail that stayed in your head instead of the file. We're not just pinning this on him, we're nailing it." He exhales, a sound like surrender and resolve welded together. "You know I never stopped working it," he says. "Not really." "I know," she replies. "Now we get to finish it." By the time Delaney steps through the glass doors of the homicide floor, word has already started to leak sideways. Cops talk, they always have. A full DNA match on a 79 and 77 double is too big to keep in a narrow lane. Heads turn when he walks by. Some of the younger detectives only know him as a name on training slides. Others have heard stories in the break room about the guy who kept a private shrine of unsolved faces in his living room. He feels the weight of their curiosity and doesn't care. His eyes are fixed on the board at the end of the hall. Quinn has already pulled new printouts of Janice and Emily's photos, sharper copies than the yellowing versions he keeps at home. She's pinned them high, center, underneath, in a row, the keywords: bus stop, laundromat, factory, 3 scratches, DNA, and now a fresh sheet of paper with a photo clipped to it. Hartley, Lucas J. Doc mugshot, orange jumpsuit, flat stare. She watches Delaney's face as he takes it in. The old pain is still there, but now it's edged with something else, a grim, electric purpose. "He aged exactly how I thought he would," he mutters. "More forehead, less hair, same eyes." Quinn taps the new lab report with one finger. "We've got a full profile match from skin cells on Emily's coat and a mixed trace from under Janice's fingernails," she says. "They reran the old slides using YSTR and low copy number amplification, stuff that might as well have been science fiction in '84. The partial we had matches this full profile, and this full profile is Hartley. Statistically, there's nowhere for him to hide." "Statistics don't testify," Delaney says. "People do. Juries listen to stories. We've got to tell this one right." The next days unfold in a blur of deliberate surgical motion. The case is officially reclassified. Active investigation, homicide. Press releases are drafted and redrafted, chiefs practicing lines in front of mirrors, lawyers choosing words as if each syllable might explode. The department wants to control the narrative this time. No leaks, no lurid nicknames, no premature victory laps. Before any cameras roll, Quinn makes the 2 calls that matter most. She goes to see the Carters in person. Some news should never travel by phone. Their apartment is different now, in a different part of town. Quieter street, smaller windows, more plants. But there's a familiarity in the way Emily's mother opens the door, in the way her eyes dart from the badge to the folder in Quinn's hand, and then to her husband behind her. Recognition and dread share the same expression. They sit at the kitchen table. New table, same configuration. 3 chairs, one forever empty. Quinn explains slowly, carefully. DNA, new methods, old evidence, a name. She watches their faces move through decades in seconds, from shock to hope to anger to something too complicated to name. "You're saying you know who did this," Emily's father says, voice thin but controlled. "After all this time." "Yes," Quinn says. "We have scientific evidence tying a man named Lucas Hartley to Emily's case, and to another woman on the West Side 2 years earlier. We're pursuing charges. We wanted you to hear it from us before you saw it on TV." Emily's mother stares at the laminated photo they hand her of Hartley's mugshot. Her fingers tremble, but she doesn't flinch away. "Has he been out?" she asks, the word barely more than air. "He was incarcerated for other crimes," Quinn says, keeping her voice carefully neutral. "He's currently not in custody. We're going to change that." The pause that follows is heavier than any sentence. Finally, the mother says, "So he walked around all those years, free, while my daughter—" Her voice breaks. She doesn't finish the sentence. She doesn't need to. There is no answer that doesn't taste like failure. Quinn doesn't try to spin it. "I'm sorry," is all she says, knowing how hollow and necessary it is at once. "We're here now. We're not stopping." She makes the same visit to the Millers. Different faces, same storm. Janice's younger brother, now middle-aged, leans against the wall with arms crossed so tight his knuckles go white. "You catch him," he says quietly. "Do you understand me? Not just for a headline, not just for a press conference. You make sure he never breathes free again." "That's the goal," Quinn replies. "We're going to need your help. Old memories, anything you remember that didn't make it into the file. Old friends of hers, old enemies. We're turning over every rock." They nod. They'll talk. They'll dig. Survivors do it better than anyone. They've been living in interrogation with themselves for decades, replaying every decision, every missed sign, every what if. Back at the precinct, Quinn assembles a small war room. She brings in a prosecutor from the state's attorney's office, a woman named Lt.Joe, who has made a career out of turning cold DNA hits into warm convictions. Chow spreads out the reports, photographs, transcripts like a general studying a battlefield. "We have science," she says. "We can work with that. But we'll need more. Context, pattern, anything that shows consciousness of guilt, anything that says this wasn't just bad luck. Bad luck? Delaney snorts. He stalked them. He knew the routes, the blind spots. He chose abandoned sites for a reason. And we'll tell the jury that, Chow says calmly. But they weren't there. They need more than your certainty. They need narrative, anchored in fact. They dig into Hartley's life like miners. Old rental records, payroll stubs, bar tabs, arrest reports from other states. Priors for assault. A breaking and entering that involved cutting power to a building before going in. A disorderly conduct near the laundromat weeks before Janice disappeared. A complaint from a woman in 1978 who said a man followed her off a bus and wouldn't stop asking what floor she lived on. The report was filed, then forgotten. The description is vague, but the location is right, the timing close. Piece by piece, a shape emerges, not just of a man who happened to be nearby, but of a man who moved through the city the way a hunter moves through woods, looking for paths, for patterns, for prey. They put out quiet feelers to Indiana parole. Last known employment records, a scrap yard, then a warehouse, then nothing. Hartley finished his supervision and vanished into the same air he once used as cover. No active warrants, no registered address. No one missed him loudly enough for paper to catch it. A task force forms to find him. Marshals, local detectives, data analysts who can wring blood from public records. They chase credit checks, traffic tickets, relatives' addresses, old associates' phone numbers. The machine of the state, late but large, grinds into motion. Quinn feels the duality every hour. On one side, the past, finally giving up its blood-stained secret. On the other, the present, where a man who should have been locked away decades ago might be living under another name, on another block, 2 doors down from another nurse, another student, another woman who doesn't know she's in a story that started before she was born. At night, when the building quiets, she sometimes finds Delaney alone in the war room, the overhead lights off, the glow from the street lamps outside painting the board in a soft, bruised orange. He stands in front of Janice and Emily's photos, now joined by Hartley's, and speaks under his breath, words she never quite catches. One night she steps closer. "You okay?" she asks. He doesn't take his eyes off the board. "I keep thinking about that call," he says. "The one we got after Emily. 3 lines, 3 marks, 3 mistakes." She remembers the tape. She's listened to it more times than is healthy. "You think it was him?" she asks. "I thought so then," Delaney says. "I hear it now in my head, with his face in front of me, and I'm not sure anymore. Maybe it was him. Maybe it was some other vulture circling the story. Doesn't matter for court. No way to prove it. But for me, I keep wondering what the 3 mistakes were." "His?" she asks. "Ours," he says, voice low. "Letting him walk past that bus stop every night. Not catching him after Janice. Not being ready when we had him in that interview room in Indiana. 3 marks on 2 walls. 3 chances we didn't have the tools to use." She doesn't argue. There's nothing to be gained from telling him they did the best they could with what they had. The fact that the city's tools are sharper now is comfort only to people who haven't been living with the blunt past. Down the hall, a printer whirs, a phone rings, then stops. Somewhere, an analyst cracks a password on an old email account and pulls up an address tied to a prepaid phone in a small town 2 states away, with surveillance cameras in its one grocery store. Somewhere else, a database cross-references a plate number captured on a toll booth camera and a purchase of duct tape and rope at a hardware store, and the lines on Quinn's map start to converge. The city doesn't know it yet, the papers don't know it yet, the families don't dare hope for it yet. But after decades of dead ends and whispers, the story is inching towards something it has never had before. A living suspect, a scientific chain, a legal path to a courtroom where cold case might finally share a sentence with another word. Solved. They don't find him on some dim Chicago corner slipping back into old habits under the glow of familiar streetlights. They find him in a place so ordinary it almost feels like an insult. A town 2 states away with 1 main street, 1 high school, 1 diner with sticky tables and coffee that tastes like it's been cooking since the Reagan years. A place where people still leave car doors unlocked because nothing bad ever really happens here, at least not on paper. It starts with a toll camera and a lazy decision. A plate number, once registered to Hartley's name, pops up on a toll road 5 years ago, then again 3 years ago, then again last summer. Same stretch, same exit, a little artery bleeding out of the interstate into nowhere in particular. The car's since been retitled under another name, but the pattern is there, whispering, "This is where he likes to drive. This is where his new life breathes." Analysts overlay the hits with data from a 6 other databases, a prepaid phone purchased in Indiana, a utilities account in a different name but with a birth date 1 digit off his, a traffic ticket for a broken taillight paid in cash at a county clerk office no one bothers to check twice. None of it screams killer. All of it hums, ghost trying to pass as ordinary. They tighten the circle. The town is small, population under 10,000, 1 industrial park on the edge of a cornfield, only so many jobs a man like Hartley could slide into without a background check tearing off his mask. A scrapyard, a trucking depot, an auto shop with a hand-painted sign, and a gravel lot full of cars on cinder blocks, every place where grease and broken metal and late hours can hide a man who doesn't like questions. They send a local cop in first, just a cruiser rolling slow by the auto shop, dash cam recording, nothing special. The officer is told not to engage, not to tip anyone. Just drive, look, see. The camera catches a man in a faded ball cap stepping out from under the hood of a dented pickup, wiping his hands on a rag, turning his head just enough for the lens to catch his profile. The still frame travels by wire back to Chicago through cables and routers and the impatience of two detectives who have spent more of their lives with this ghost than with most of their family. The picture lands on Quinn's desk. She enlarges it. Grain breaks up around the edges, but the core is clear, heavier, grayer, but the same angular jaw, the same set to the mouth, the same distance in the eyes. She doesn't need software to tell her. Her gut says it first. Delaney leans over her shoulder, breath catching. "That's him," he says. No wavering, no qualifiers. "That's our man." The task force doesn't move blind. They map routines. For 3 days, unmarked cars sit at the edge of town, watching the auto shop. They see him arrive at 7:13 every morning, thermos in hand. See him smoke 2 cigarettes out back at lunch, alone, staring at nothing. See him lock up at 6:04 p.m. every night like a man who respects repetition. A small rented house on a side street 2 blocks away. No visitors, no visible family. A life so blank it feels scripted. Background checks on his alias. Mark Lewis, the name on the utility bill in the mailbox, turn up nothing older than 9 years. No childhood records, no school transcripts, no out-of-state jobs. A life that begins neatly just after his parole ended and stops neatly at the town border. Someone laundering their own history, one fake form at a time. On the 4th morning, they move. Not with sirens and shouting, not with a phalanx of cars roaring into town like a movie. They come in quiet. Marshals in unmarked sedans. Local officers in uniforms who've been handed a name and told only what they need to know. That the man who fixes their brakes and rotates their tires might have killed women in another city when those officers were still kids. There's a moment in the briefing at the small town station when one of them says, "Hartley? At Jim's Auto? No way." And the room goes sharp and cold. There's always someone who thinks they know a monster when they see one. At 7:09 a.m., the shop door rolls up with a rattle. Hartley, Mark here, steps into the fluorescent wash, same thermos, same cap, unaware that the air has changed. 2 marshals are already inside, pretending to admire a rusted Camaro. Another stands by the counter, chatting idly with the owner, a man with grease under his nails and worry already creeping into his eyes. Quinn isn't inside. She's in a car across the street, watching through the windshield, heart beating in her throat. This is not her jurisdiction, not technically. The marshals take the lead, but this is her story, her ghosts, her man. They wait until he's 3 steps in, hands occupied, routine fully engaged. Then the marshal by the counter turns, badge out, voice crisp. "Lucas Hartley, Federal Marshals, we need you to show us your hands." For a split second, the world holds its breath. His eyes flick from badge to faces to the open door. Fight, flight, freeze. The lizard brain stutters through options. His shoulders twitch as if he might bolt. But he's boxed. 2 marshals behind, one at his side. The shop owner frozen in place, as if he's been welded to the floor. Whatever predator instincts he honed on dark streets in 79 were blunted by years of fences and concrete. He lifts his hand slowly. "You got the wrong guy," he says automatically, like a reflex he's used before. "Name's Mark." The cuffs click around his wrists. Metal on bone. The marshals read him his rights. There's a moment where he laughs, short and humorless, when they say the words, "on a warrant out of Chicago." The name of the city hits him like a slap. You can see it in the way his jaw locks, the way his eyes go colder. Ghost recognizes the old graveyard. Outside, the small town watches, curious faces behind diner windows, a couple stopping mid-step on their morning walk, a kid on a bike frozen with 1 foot on the curb, watching a man he knows as the guy who sometimes tosses him a candy bar when his mom's car is in the shop get loaded into the back of a car like a villain on the 6 o'clock news. The owner of the shop stands on the threshold, bewildered, wiping his hands on a rag that's suddenly useless. "What's this about?" he asks one of the marshals. The answer is as dry as it is devastating. "Old homicides," the marshal says. "Chicago, before he ever came here." By the time the cars hit the interstate, the town's gossip line has ignited. The man at the auto shop was wanted for murder, Chicago murder, a serial killer, a misunderstanding. Mixed stories race each other down phone lines and across breakfast counters. Someone pulls up his doc photo on a cracked smartphone screen and compares it to the man they know. The faces line up. The disbelief doesn't. In the back of a separate car, miles behind, Quinn rides with a file on her lap and a storm in her chest. They didn't let her sit with him, not yet. chain of custody, jurisdictional protocols, a dozen rules written to keep emotions from staining the record. She understands, intellectually. Emotionally, she wants to lean forward, look at him in the rearview mirror and say, "We waited 30 years, Lucas. Did you really think the city forgot?" Back in Chicago, somebody calls the state's attorney's office with 3 words that snap everyone on the other end to attention. "We have Hartley." Chow clears her calendar with a single stroke. Hearings can be postponed. Meetings can be rescheduled. Cases on the brink of trial will have to balance without her for a day. This story that started when she was a kid watching anchors talk about a mysterious West Side killer, has finally delivered a living defendant across her threshold. She orders an arrest warrant upgraded, charges drafted, extradition papers prepped. 2 counts of murder to start, carefully written and weighted. There may be more, but these 2 are enough to slam a door shut. Word reaches the Carters and the Millers before it reaches the cameras. Quinn keeps that promise. Another knock on their doors. Another sit down at familiar tables. This time the news has a different shape. "We have him in custody," she says, and watches the words sink in, deeper and slower than she expected. They look at her like she's just said gravity stopped. "In custody," Emily's father repeats, as if testing each syllable. "Not questioned, not maybe. He's arrested." "Yes," she says, formally. "We're bringing him back to Chicago to face charges for Emily's murder and for Janice's." The labs confirm he was at both scenes. The state's attorney is confident we have enough to move forward. Emily's mother doesn't smile. She doesn't cry. She just sits there, hands folded, and says quietly, "Good. I want to look at his face and know that he knows we know." At the Miller house, Janice's brother paces while Quinn speaks, like a man whose body can't hold this much waiting still. When she finishes, he stops, fists clenched. "You make sure he doesn't cut a deal and disappear into another prison," he says. "I want his name in the same sentence as my sister's for something other than a rumor." "You'll get that," Quinn says, in court, under oath. "The press hears about it anyway within hours. You can't move a suspect across state lines with marshals and paperwork and not leave a trail. Rumors leak. A stringer hears chatter on the scanner. A producer gets a text from a cousin in that small town. Guy from Jim's auto hauled off. They say he killed girls in Chicago back in the 70s. Newsrooms hum. Old footage is pulled from archives. Grainy clips of the abandoned factory and the laundromat flicker back onto screens for the first time in years. By evening, the headline rolls across local broadcasts. Arrest made in 1979 Chicago cold case. The word alleged gets used because lawyers insist on it. Commentators dust off phrases they haven't used in a decade. Infamous West Side murders. Community in shock. Breakthrough in decades-old investigation. Kids who never heard of Janice or Emily ask their parents what this is about. Some parents change the channel. Others say, "I remember when that happened," and feel 30 years collapse into a single breath. In the bullpen at the precinct, detectives stop what they're doing when the news cuts to a live shot outside the station. The banner at the bottom of the screen screams, "Chicago 1979 cold case solved. Suspect in custody." It's premature, technically. No jury has spoken, no verdict has been read. But the cameras don't care about legal nuance. They care about story arcs. For them, this is the moment the circle closes. Inside, Quinn and Delaney know better. This isn't the end. It's the start of the most fragile part, turning a name and a profile and 30-year-old dust into a case that can survive cross-examination, reasonable doubt, and the corrosive effects of time on memory. Hartley arrives at the station under cover of the early morning dark, long before the cameras gather. They bring him in through the garage, cuffs tight, flanked by marshals and local officers whose faces are set in that expression cops wear when they're escorting a man accused of something that's stuck in the city's throat for generations. He looks around once, slowly, taking in the cinder block walls, the fluorescent lights, the hallways that smell like coffee and paper. He's walked through places like this before, but this one feels heavier, like the building itself is leaning in. In the new interview room, the walls are painted a neutral beige instead of the institutional green he remembers. The camera in the corner is smaller now, digital, blinking a red dot instead of humming with tape. The table is the same cheap laminate. The chairs still squeak. Some things don't need progress. They uncuff him, sit him down, leave one wrist chained to a metal ring bolted into the table. He flexes his fingers, looks at the door. When Quinn and Delaney walk in together, he snorts a soft, disbelieving laugh. "You again," he says. "Didn't we do this already?" Quinn sets the folder on the table and opens it with the careful, controlled motion of someone laying out evidence for a jury that hasn't arrived yet. Photos, reports, lab printouts. She doesn't shove them at him. She lets them sit between them, a small paper wall. "Last time we talked," she says, voice measured, "we had questions and a lot of circumstantial dots. We asked for your help. You told us you were just a thief, a brawler, that killing girls wasn't your art. He smirks, almost pleased that she remembered his line. Still true, he says. You dragged me across 3 states just so you could quote me back to myself? Delaney slides the new lab report across the table. He doesn't sit yet. He stands, hands on the back of his chair, eyes never leaving Hartley's face. No, he says. We dragged you back because the science finally caught up. Hartley glances down at the printout. Lines of numbers, marker codes, alleles. It might as well be a foreign language. His gaze returns to them, unimpressed. What's this supposed to be? That, Quinn says, tapping the report once with a fingertip, is your DNA profile matched to biological material recovered from the coat of Emily Carter and under the fingernails of Janice Miller. It's not partial anymore, Lucas. It's full. It says you were there. It says you touched them. It says you stopped being just a rumor in a files room and became a fact. For the first time since they've known his name, the swagger cracks. Not much. Just a flicker of something in his eyes. Fear, calculation, the dawning understanding that the game he's been playing in his head for decades has shifted rules without telling him. He covers it quickly, leans back, smiles a cold, thin smile. Science, he says like it's a joke. You people and your magic machines. You know how many guys in here say the lab got it wrong? Contamination. Cops who wanted a collar more than they wanted the truth. You expect me to roll over because you waved a piece of paper at me? We expect you to listen, Delaney says, because this time we don't need you to talk. For years, you were the only one who knew what happened in those rooms. That's over. The walls are talking now. Hartley's gaze sharpens. He recognizes the name. He hears it in the way Delaney says it, like a wound and a promise. You're still on about that nurse, he says, still carrying her around like a hobby? Delaney finally sits. His knees protest. He ignores them. I carried both of them into retirement, he says. Now I get to carry them into court. The camera blinks its steady red eye, recording every word, every twitch. Somewhere down the hall, a prosecutor waits with a checklist of elements she needs for first-degree murder, for pattern, for aggravated circumstances. Somewhere across the city, 2 families sit in front of muted televisions, waiting for someone to tell them when they'll have to sit in a room with the man the city has decided is responsible for the empty chairs at their tables. Outside, a headline is already forming in the minds of editors, shaped by urgency and the need to compress decades into a single punch of words. Chicago, 1979, cold case solved. Arrest shocks community. Inside, in the small beige room where the past has finally caught up with the present, the story is still unfolding, breath by breath, word by word, as a man who once thought he slipped between the cracks realizes that the cracks have closed around him. He doesn't crack in the first hour. Monsters almost never do, not the ones who survive long enough to earn the word cold. He sits there with the chain jangling softly when he shifts. Eyes narrowed, lips twisted into that half-sneer of a man who has spent his life refusing to be impressed. So what now? Hartley asks, voice low, testing. You want me to fill in your blanks? Paint pretty pictures for your jury? We want the truth, Quinn says again, and now the words feel heavier, backed by years of dust and a lab full of humming machines. We know you were with them, we know you touched them, we know you walked away. He taps the lab report with one grimy knuckle. You keep saying that, he mutters. But this? He flicks the paper. This isn't me. This is some kid in a white coat saying he can read ghosts in a drop of sweat from 40 years ago. Delaney leans in, his voice quiet, controlled. You ever wonder why we didn't let this go? He asks. Why, out of all the files on all the shelves in this city, this one kept getting pulled back down. Hartley shrugs, but his eyes twitch. You had nothing better to do? Because the way you left them wasn't random, Delaney says. You folded Emily's coat, you lined up her shoes, you carved your little lines into the wall like a dog lifting his leg on a hydrant. You thought that meant something. You wanted someone to see it. Consider this your moment. We see it. For a heartbeat, the mask slips. Not far. Just enough. A flicker of pride, almost. A glint that says, yes, I was there. Yes, I did that. Yes, I wanted you to notice. Then the guard snaps back down. He snorts. You're seeing what you want, he says. You always have. They push, they circle, they revisit the bus routes, the abandoned buildings, the routes he walked home from late shifts. They drop names of bars that don't exist anymore, alleys that have been paved over, corners where kids once played in the shadow of boarded factories. They watch his face for micro-flinches when they say, laundromat, second floor, January blizzard. They find small tells, tiny stutters, but nothing clean enough to hang a confession on. When they ask about other women, other winters, he smiles. You think I'm some big bad boogeyman, he says. Serial killer? That what this is for you? You want me to start listing off names like a shopping list, make your careers? I'm not giving you that. We don't need you to say anything, Quinn replies, standing. Not anymore. He raises his chained hand in a mock toast. Then go tell your cameras you solved it, he says. Go pat yourselves on the back. We're not talking to cameras, she says. We're talking to a judge. He laughs, short and sharp. Judges love a good story, he says. You better rehearse. He asks for a lawyer. Of course he does. The interview shuts down. The tape stops, rights invoked, process engaged. The door closes on his smirk. Outside, in the hallway, the tension doesn't drain, it just looks for somewhere else to go. Quinn pushes her hands into her pockets so no one sees them shake. He's not going to give us anything, she says. He already did, Delaney answers. 30 years ago, on their bodies, on those walls, we finally learned how to listen. A public defender arrives first, a harried woman with tired eyes who looks like she's already carrying 10 other defendants on her shoulders. She meets with him in a separate room, door closed, glass windows partially frosted. Quinn watches from across the hall, the way people watch a storm rolling over a field they can't step into. The lawyer emerges, half an hour later, face set, file clutched to her chest. He denies everything, she says, more out of obligation than hope that anyone in the room believes her client. Claims the DNA is bad, says he's being railroaded because of his record. You know the script. We wrote the script, Delaney mutters. We'll be entering a not guilty plea, she adds, voice getting that defensive edge lawyers wear in cop shops. And we'll need full discovery. Every lab note, every chain of custody form from 77 and 79. If anything is missing, anything's off, we'll use it. Of course you will, Chow says, stepping in smoothly. And we'll give you everything. We're not afraid of our paperwork. The arraignment is short and clinical. A courtroom that has seen decades of petty thefts, DUIs, assaults, now holds a man accused of tearing a hole in the city's history. He stands in a tan jail jumpsuit, hands cuffed in front of him, expression deliberately blank. The clerk reads out his full name, the charges, the dates. Murder in the first degree, count 1, Janice Miller. Murder in the first degree, count 2, Emily Carter. Each name lands like a hammer. In the gallery, the Carters and Millers sit in the first row, side by side, a small, jagged wall of grief and endurance. Emily's mother's hands are laced so tight her knuckles are white. Janice's brother stares straight ahead, jaw clenched, eyes boring into the back of Hartley's head as if he can burn holes through it. How do you plead? The judge asks. Hartley lifts his chin, voice steady, not guilty. The words echo. They sound obscene. Chow doesn't flinch. She expected it. The judge denies bail without ceremony. Flight risk, severity of charges, time elapsed, the gavel hits. The date for the next hearing is set. The machinery of justice creaks into a higher gear. Outside, the cameras finally get what they want. Images. Grainy shots of Hartley being led down a hallway. Freeze frames of his face, circled on screens with headlines that scream, "Alleged killer in 1979, cold case pleads not guilty." Reporters throw phrases like "decades of mystery," "families seek closure," DNA breakthrough into their scripts like seasoning. Quinn hates the word closure. It sounds too neat, too final, like a box you can tape shut and stack in a garage. She knows better. There is no closing something like this. There's only changing its shape. The case file, once thin, grows monstrous. Boxes of transcripts, fresh statements from old witnesses, some now frail, some vanished. Lab reports thicker than some novels. Chow reads every line, red pen slashing margins, sticky notes blooming from pages like neon warnings. She knows what the defense will attack. The age of the evidence, the gaps in the record, the human hands that handled samples before gloves and protocols were what they are now. Chain of custody is our Achilles heel, she says in a late-night strategy session, the walls of the conference room lined with photos and timelines. We've got logs, but they're old. Different standards. If I'm the defense, I argue contamination, degraded samples, sloppy storage. Cops who didn't know this stuff would matter someday. So we show that it's consistent, Quinn replies. We bring in the techs who handled it, the ones still alive. We show the jury the boxes, the seals, the way they sat untouched. Each person signs their name and we line it up like a parade. And we put you on the stand, Frank, Chow says, turning to Delaney. You testify to what the scene looked like, what the room smelled like, how you collected every scrap because you didn't know what would matter. We make them feel 79 in their bones. He nods slowly. You think they want to? He asks. They weren't born then. They live in a world where you can pull up anything on a phone. This is ancient history to them. We'll make it current, Chow says evenly. We'll remind them he's been walking around in their world, not just in grainy black and whites. The defense teams up. The overworked public defender is joined by a private attorney, hired with money that probably didn't come from the auto shop paycheck. Someone with a reputation for chewing holes in forensic cases, for turning lab techs into stammering witnesses with a few well-placed questions. In a pretrial hearing, he lays out his tactic like a knife on a table. The state wants you to believe, he says to the judge, but really to everyone, that a sample scraped off a coat and a fingernail in a crumbling warehouse in an old laundromat stored God knows how for 3 decades, passed through God knows how many hands, has magically yielded a pristine, unassailable DNA profile that just so happens to match a man with a record. That's not science. That's wishful thinking with a lab coat on. In the back, Quinn feels her blood rise. Chow doesn't blink. We'll show the evidence, she says. We have the logs, we have the boxes, we have independent lab verification. This isn't magic, it's method. The judge lets it in. The jury will hear it all. The prosecution's confidence, the defense's skepticism, science on one side, doubt on the other, and somewhere in the middle, two young women who never had a chance to tell their own story. Outside the courthouse, people argue in smaller groups, at bus stops, in bar booths, in break rooms. If the DNA says it's him, one man says, tapping a newspaper with Hartley's mugshot on the front. You can't fake that. Another shakes her head. You read about those wrongful convictions? Guys locked up for years because some lab tech messed up? I'm not saying he didn't do it, but 40 years is a long time. Evidence goes bad, people forget. On talk radio, callers line up with opinions. This proves DNA is the future, one says. They should dig up every box in every basement and rerun it. Another growls. Future. Tell that to the families whose daughters died before anyone figured out how to read a spit sample. Future's late. Back in the neighborhoods where it started, the West Side wears its age like armor. The factory is gone, replaced by a storage facility with clean white walls and a keypad at the gate. The laundromat is long demolished. In its place sits a narrow church with a blue-painted door and a sign that promises healing every Sunday at 11. But people remember. Old-timers on stoops shake their heads and say, I knew he was still out there somewhere, even if they never knew who he was. Younger faces listen and realize for the first time that the streets they walk every day were once hunting grounds. Quinn drives those streets at night sometimes. Out of habit, out of something like reverence, she rolls down the window and lets the city's noise wash in. Laughter from open windows, music from passing cars, the distant wail of sirens that will never fully go away. She pictures Emily in her navy coat, Janice hauling her laundry bag through the snow, the long line of women whose names never became headlines. She whispers their names into the windshield, a low chant, and promises them, again, that she'll do everything she can to make sure the story that gets told in court is worthy of their absence. At home, Delaney sits by his board and adds one more photo to the line. Hartley's latest mugshot, printed from the booking file, tacked beneath Janice and Emily. The symmetry is brutal. 2 victims, 1 suspect, 30-plus years between the shutter clicks. He stares at the 3 of them until his eyes water. He thinks about that call again. 3 lines, 3 marks, 3 mistakes. He hears the voice in his head, tries to match it to Hartley's cadence now. Sometimes it fits, sometimes it doesn't. Time distorts sound. Memory fills gaps with what it wants. Maybe the 3 mistakes weren't theirs. Maybe they were Hartley's, killing Janice in a way that left her able to scratch him, to claw skin into her nails. Choosing Emily's coat, handling it just enough to leave his cells behind. Walking into that bar fight years later that got him arrested in the right era to have his cheeks swabbed. 3 moments where he thought he was untouchable, and the universe quietly took notes. The night before jury selection, Quinn can't sleep. She sits at her kitchen table, file open, sticky notes like confetti. The headline from the local paper sits beside her coffee cup. Decades-old Chicago cold case goes to trial. Families brace for impact. The word solved appears in the subhead, but there's a question mark between the lines. Everyone is waiting to see if the science, the stories, the ghosts will hold up under the bright, merciless lights of a courtroom. She flips to the last page of Delaney's old memo, the one he wrote after the failed Indiana interview years ago. There's a line there she'd read before but never really absorbed, written in his cramped, impatient type. If we ever get the right tools, this one can still break. Underneath, handwritten in ballpoint, added later. Until then, the city carries it. Now the tools are here. The break is happening. The city is watching. In the morning, 12 strangers will take seats in a box of polished wood and padded chairs. They'll be handed the weight of 40 years and asked to decide, beyond a reasonable doubt, whether the man in the tan jumpsuit at the defense table is the same shadow that moved through a blizzard in 1977 and a hard December night in 1979. They'll hear about alleles and alleys, about bus schedules and broken windows, about 3 faint scratches nobody understood until too late. They won't hear about the dreams that woke Delaney at 3 a.m. for 2 decades, or the way Quinn drives past storage units and laundromats with her hand unconsciously reaching for the gun at her hip. Those parts of the story live off the record. For now, the city exhales slowly and leans toward the courthouse. Heartbeats sink to the footsteps of jurors climbing stone steps. The headline in every mind hangs unfinished, waiting for a verdict to complete it. Chicago 1979 cold case solved, or not.